The meeting of the Standing Finance Committee will resume. Head 77, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. Head 77, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, $709,144,000. I will now invite the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries to make a brief opening statement, not exceeding 5 minutes. Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I want to make 5 points in the introduction. And the first point is to acknowledge that I know my colleagues and the country is very interested in this 500 million stimulus package. And I want to make the point that when we go through the books of this ministry under Head 77, there had been no opportunity really to discuss the 500 million stimulus package, simply because it's a line item, it's a fund created under the Ministry of Finance. The Minister referred to that yesterday. And the funds are made available to the Ministry to use as required. But for the purposes of letting the country know what has happened with the 500 million, I want to say right away that if anybody expected that checks would have been written and handed out to people in the way they have done it in the US, that is not the intent of it. What we have done on that 500 million fund is that we have designed projects that we believe will help not only the farmers but the country. And I could say that we've made commitments in respect of about 400 million of that 500 million. And those commitments are essentially in homestead projects, 2 homestead projects, in particular in El Reposo and in Talparo. We've made commitments in respect of projects within the ministry to the tune of about $20 million. We've made commitments and we've made payments in respect of the food box COVID relief program, and that is in respect of at least $62.5 million. We've made commitments for a road program that was announced by the Honorable Minister of Finance, $80 million. We've made commitments in respect of digital transformation, in particular in relation to land administration, and that is about $18 million. We've made commitments to a number of smaller projects with farmers and across the country, and those commitments are in respect of about $400 million. The $300 million that you see in this year's allocation under the Ministry of Finance represents the component of that 500 million that we believe we will ask the Minister of Finance to pay in this fiscal year. So what I've described are those things that have been developed and are ready for tender and are ready for implementation. And we believe out of that 400 million that we have made commitments to, we'd ask the Minister of Finance to pay out 300 million of that. And that would leave us out of the fund of 500 with another 100 million to access in the fiscal year that follows. I want to draw attention quickly to the road program, $80 million, the continuation of the food box program. I want to say that as we go through the books, you would find that in the development program, we've fallen short, mainly because for 60% of this last fiscal year, we've been with limited staff and with COVID restrictions. We've not been able to execute some of the infrastructure works because of the restriction on construction activities. And we are ready to do that in this fiscal year once we are able to operate with full staff. And I want to close by saying there will be observation regarding salaries and COLA, and that has to do with the continuing exercise of the Ministry of Finance to ensure that we allocate, we make provision in the estimates for only those positions that are either filled or filled with a body who is acting, and we continue to avoid making provision for those positions that are entirely vacant. Thank you.
Honourable members, the question is that the sum of $709 $144,000 for Head 77, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, stand part of the schedule. Honorable members, the sum of $709,144,000 for Head 77, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, is comprised of monies proposed for expenditure under the following subheads and items to be found in the draft estimates of recurrent expenditure, the draft estimates of the revenue and expenditure of the statutory boards and similar bodies and of the Tobago House of Assembly, and the draft estimates of the development program. We shall now proceed to consider the draft estimates of recurrent expenditure. Subhead 01, Personal Expenditure, Item 001. Item, Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to the Honourable Minister and all the other persons providing support to the Minister. Minister, you indicated in your line item 01, salaries and cost of living allowance. Minister, you indicated in your opening remarks the limit of staff, the COVID restrictions, and upgrade of the full staff. However, what I'm seeing in this line item is a decrease of $996,000 for this financial term. Can you kindly advise on that decrease?
Madam Chair, I'm trying to find the item my friend is referring to.
It's on page 352, 01-00101, salaries and cost of living allowance.
Madam Chair, I thought I had avoided that recurring question by indicating that the provisions have been made in respect of those positions that are either filled or in respect of which there's somebody acting, and the reduction represents the fact that, as I said, we continue to review, and the estimate represents what we estimate the salaries and cost of living allowances would be in this fiscal year.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, if it is we are continuing to review, and this is the estimate for 2022 with a decrease of 996,000, can you indicate to us how many persons that are currently in the system that are estimated to no longer be part of the system for 2022? Because there's a decline in this vote for salaries.
Madam Chair, I'm tempted to set aside the book and pull out the crystal ball. It's an estimate. It depends on what goes on during the fiscal year. The Public Service Commission may make appointments. For example, in the last fiscal year, we were happy to receive 25 new game wardens. It meant that vacant positions were filled. It would have required an adjustment, and that adjustment is made by changes within what is allocated to us, and it is impossible to say what will happen in this fiscal year because we do not know what the Public Service Commission would do in respect of filling vacancies. We have 631 positions in the ministry in which there are no bodies acting or otherwise.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Minister, can you advise if the predial larceny squad is paid for under this line item?
No, it is not.
Member for Caroni Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm at line item 05, please. Given that the response of the Minister in respect of line item 01, Minister, how do you reconcile the fact there is a decrease in the number of personnel, but the contribution to the NIS increases?
Well, at no point I've said there's an increase in the number of personnel. I've said that it fluctuates it will fluctuate during the fiscal year. And the other thing is that these are estimates. Sometimes an increase does not necessarily mean that you have increased the personnel. An increase may represent the fact that you have an increased expense based on an exercise in terms of reconciliation that takes place. So it is impossible to equate that 535,000 increase, an increase in bodies, simply because we do not know if we'll have additional persons filling vacancies in the next fiscal.
Member for Carney, member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 06, remuneration for board members. Honourable Minister, in the last financial year, Standing Finance Committee, this line item, you were asked by my colleague from Arapuch West with respect for the recurring allocation of $43,000 in this line item, and your response was that the board may not have been appointed. I'm not seeing any revised estimates. Can you advise if it is that this board has been appointed, or if yeah?
It is not a board. It is in respect of if board appointments are made and the ministry has to make payments, then the provision is made for those payments to be made. So you'd see cabinet-appointed committees later on. You'd see in the agencies and state enterprises under the ministry, you'd see provision. And this is in respect of something that may or may not happen in the fiscal.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Minister, line item 27. The actual spend for 2020 was 553,000. The estimate for 2021 was 495,000, but the revised estimate was again 636,000. What I'm seeing here for the 2022 estimate is a decrease of 141,000 from the revised estimate. For the estimated year, for the year 2022, the estimate is 495,000. Is this a matter of under budgeting, taking into consideration the actual spend for 2020 and the revised estimates for 2021 for the contribution to group health insurance for monthly paid officers?
It's not under budgeting. It's not under budgeting. These are payments that we must make. We must make contributions to the group health insurance for the daily rated workers. The issue is what are those contributions likely to be?
Not the daily rated, the monthly paid.
Right. So whether it's daily rated or you want to, okay, well, it's the same thing whichever one, but you're on 27. So we make provision for it. And the extent of the contribution is a variable for the same reason I gave before. We may have additional persons coming into the employment of the ministry. So it varies, and that estimate is what we estimate it to be. But in the management of payments and expenses during the fiscal year, we have the opportunity to move funds around.
Honourable Minister, could you advise how you go about estimating, knowing fully well that what the actual spend was in 2020, knowing what the revised estimate was, and yet you are still decreasing this line item by 141,000.
Okay,
well,
so 1 minute, Minister. Member, I'm not going to allow that question. That has been a recurring question over the last 4 days since we've been engaged in this exercise. I think all ministers and the Minister of Finance have been at pains to explain the budgeting exercise and how estimates have been come to. So I'm not going to allow that question. Member for Kamuto Mansinilla, maybe you have another question you could ask later.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, Honourable Minister, line item 29, overtime payment. Honourable Minister, I'm just curious, which division of the ministry would the workers be affected in as much as a decrease in the overtime payment?
Well, at this, no worker is affected. You have 300 and a provision is made, so we expect that from time to time workers will be required to work overtime. It is something, as I've heard my colleague, the Minister of Finance, say over and over, permanent secretaries have been mandated to manage overtime. We pay careful attention to it. We've made provision on the assumption that we will continue to manage overtime. We've also considered that the restrictions, which I mentioned before, I don't know when they would be removed, and we'll have a full turnout of our workers. And we've taken those things into consideration, keeping in mind the overarching thing about budgeting is that if we do in fact incur more than we estimate, the way the budget works allow us to deal with that.
Thank you.
Member for Kuvanaur.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to refer the Honourable Minister's attention to line item 14, remuneration to members of Cabinet appointed committee. There was a spend for 2021 in the revised estimate there. Can the Minister advise what this Cabinet appointed committee function was? And would the Minister provide us in writing with the members of this Cabinet appointed committee?
Madam Chair, I'll provide that in writing.
Thank you.
Item.
Also, if I may, line item 04, monthly paid officers allowances. Again, the actual spend was 1.5 million in 2020. The revised estimates for 2021 was 1.3. However, there's a decrease in the estimate for 2022 of 400,000. Can the Honourable Minister advise why this decrease?
Madam Chair, I think I've offered that explanation a few times already. The way the budgeting process works, in terms of the previous year, it's not because you have additional bodies or anything. You may have had unpaid liabilities, or you may have had claims which were not made. PSs across the public service grapple with persons who are entitled to certain types of allowances who make claims beyond the period limited to do so, and it distorts the budgeting process. That's one factor. And the other factor is if we've projected based on the positions which are filled or in respect of which they are acting persons, and if that changes on the basis of what the Public Service Commission does within the year, then we will take the appropriate measures within the allocation.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Minister, you indicated that in the budgeting process there may have been claims that the line item would have been utilized for. Can you advise us if there actually were claims in the last financial year that had to be settled? And can you also advise us if there are any outstanding claims at this point in time for this line item?
I would definitely do that in writing, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, sir.
Member for Oakwood West.
Madam Chair, asked and answered. Thank you.
Item 002, Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 01, salaries and cost of living allowance on 002 agriculture. There is a decrease here of $3 million from the revised estimates of 2021. Can the Honourable Minister advise why the significant decrease in this line item?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. For the 7th time since I have appeared today, this has to do with the efforts, the directive of the Minister of Finance that we do not make provision for those positions which are vacant, and for that reason you see that reduction. And if it is that on account of the work of the Public Service Commission, any or all of the 631 vacancies I spoke about on 6 previous occasions today, they are filled. The budgetary process allows us to meet the cost of those positions, and we will do that. Thank you.
Minister,
Member for
can you?
Governor?
Yes, Minister, can you advise the number of vacant positions under this line item?
Absolutely, Madam Chair. I would be happy to provide the listing of the 631 vacant positions I've alluded to on 7 previous occasions since I've been here. I'd be happy to provide that in writing to my friend.
Madam Chair, for the ease of moving swiftly in today's committee, all vacancies under 01 that exist in future items, would the Minister provide that so I wouldn't have to keep asking concerning the vacancies? Also, Minister, can you advise?
But just now, I'm happy that you are willing to adopt an approach that will help advance. But I also want us to sort of pay a little more acute attention. I allow the Minister to answer, but that 631 posts without bodies, even in his initial answer to you on that first question under 002, that number was mentioned. So let's try and also pay a little more acute attention to responses. I know it's hard because we may come with set questions, but sometimes the responses anticipate the question, and it would help if we recognize that. Okay?
Thank you, Minister.
Right.
Thank you, Chair. On this same line item, salaries and cost of living allowance, can the Minister advise if persons under the predial larceny unit is paid under here?
No, Madam Chair, they're not.
Can the Honourable Minister advise if there is a future line item under 01 that the predial larcenies, so that I don't ask the same question under all the different sub-items? Because yesterday, when the Minister of National Security was here, he advised that it was not paid under that ministry. So, predial larceny, most likely, you can advise us which one of the...
Madam Chair, I would await your ruling, but I'm quite prepared to answer that question if it would save us a couple hours this afternoon.
Well, you know, the only thing is that, member, I guess it might be a bit novel, but the books that we are given would also give you a breakdown of staff in the books so that some of those questions would be there to guide you in the booklets. And basically, I think when we ask questions here, it's that we know what we're asking and we're not fishing, right? But therefore, I'd ask you to ask another question, and maybe you will find your predial larceny and put it under the correct line item.
Well, if the Honourable Minister will want advice in going forward, so I don't have to ask the same question continuously until we reach to the correct answer.
Item 003, Animal Production and Health. Item 004, Horticulture. Item 006, Surveys and Mapping. Member for Cooper, no.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, under line item 01, there's a significant decrease of 1.2 million there. Can the Minister advise what this decrease specifically is for?
Survey and Mapping 01, Salaries and Cost of Living Allowances.
Yes.
I thought we adopted a position with respect to all 01.
Is there any specific reason other than what we talk about, the budgeting process, that this line item referred to?
Member, given your own suggestion with respect to the Minister, and I think the Minister agreed that he'd give you a response in writing with respect to all 01 salaries and cost of living allowance. Okay, so can we go on? Do you have another question under item 006? Okay. Item 007. Item 008. Item 010. Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 14, remuneration to members of cabinet-appointed committee. Can the minister advise what was the function of this cabinet-appointed committee, and if he can also provide in writing the members of this cabinet-appointed committee?
There's at least one cabinet-appointed committee, the Wildlife Conservation Committee, which is contained in the Conservation of Wildlife Act, and I'd be happy to provide the details of that committee and any other committee remunerated under that line item 010 Forestry, item 14.
So the undertaking is as far as remuneration to members of cabinet-appointed committees. For the entire ministry, you will give a breakdown.
I will, Madam Chair,
Yes.
for all committees.
Okay, good.
Madam Chairman, could I just get a clarification? If something is already in the public domain, either by way of an answer to a question in Parliament or a press release or any other public medium, is it necessary to give those details again here, or simply say it's in the public domain XYZ?
But once it's in the public domain, it is taken as known. If it's even on Hansard, it's taken as known.
But Madam Chair, it will also be in the administrative reports from the various ministries. Again, they have to read.
Subhead
Madam
02,
Chair.
Goods and Services.
Madam Chair,
You have a question on the item 010?
well, I just want to seek some clarification based on the intervention of the Minister of Finance. Will I be allowed?
Well, if you're talking about item 010 Forestry, I'll allow that.
Well, in the context of the information with respect to remuneration to members of cabinet-appointed committees and so on, sometimes I know that there are matters in the public domain, but in relation to the allocation of projected expenditure for $52 billion, I think that in the interest of transparency and the wider citizenry who may be interested as it relates to the expenditure, we may be inclined to provide further information and so on.
Chairman, just to clarify on this line item, I heard the Minister refer to the Wildlife Committee, and the membership of that committee has already been published in the public domain. And that I was being very specific, because if members opposite are going to keep asking for details that are already in the public domain, it seems to me that that is a breach.
I don't know, Minister, if they are projected cabinet-appointed committees.
Member for Couva South. And, you know, it's something that is happening and recurrent in this committee. Statements are made in a particular context, and it is stretched to universality. All right? And I think you and the minister are not at odds with respect to what you're saying. The minister is talking about a specific question. You're talking about a generalization. Let's move on. Subhead 02, Goods and Services. Item 001, General Administration. Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I would like to refer the Honourable Minister's attention to line item 05, telephone. Minister, this line item, in 2021, the estimate was 3.7 million, whereas the revised estimate was 4.6 million. Can the Minister advise if it is that the increase in this revised estimate had anything to do with arrears on the telephone expenses?
Absolutely. Thanks for answering your own question, member. You would remember that in last year, I pointed out that in 2015, as minister, I met maybe $11 million in bills to be paid in terms of internet and telephones, and about a similar amount on security. So this represents continuous payments towards the reduction, and we're getting to a point now where we have to deal with actuals in the particular financial year. And again, Ministry through the PS is very active in trying to manage telephone costs and reduce it using the technology that is now available.
Minister, for this line item, the 2022 estimate is 958,000, a decrease of 3.7 million, whereas the actual for 2020 was 7.2 million. That's some significant difference with the actual spend in 2020 versus what we are actually budgeting for in 2022. Can the Minister advise if this 11 million in arrears have been paid off or if there are still outstanding arrears?
The arrears, as I said before, what the movement of the figures from 7 million to 4 to the provision we made now represents reduction of the liabilities which we met in 2015, and the figure represents an estimate that we've made in respect of what we are likely to incur in this fiscal year.
Member for Governor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 16 and 22. Can the Minister advise if any of these line items cover the payments to the officers at the predial larceny unit?
Yes, Madam Chair. The predial larceny squad is paid under short-term employment, line item 22, and this represents what we expect in this fiscal year to use for short-term employment, which is not restricted to predial larceny squad alone. It covers those things. Minister of Finance has spoken about that, those short-term engagements that we do from time to time. Unfortunately, in the management of it, it do go beyond short-term, but this is what is provided in this fiscal year as an estimate.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Minister, I'm seeing a decrease in this line item of 2.038 million from the revised estimates of 2021 and significant less than what was actually spent in 2020. Can the Minister advise if this budgeted figure for 2022 will be sufficient to efficiently provide the human resource personnel that is required for the efficient running of the predial larceny unit?
Madam Chair, as I said, this is not exclusively for the predial larceny squad, and it represents the estimate. And if I may say, that is simply because we've gone through an exercise of trying to bring efficiency to this predial larceny squad. As a first step in previous fiscal years, we've improved the office accommodation for the squad. We've made available transport equipment. I'm on record as saying we've had delinquent officers who have done a good job at mashing that up. Yes, it's right here next to me. She knows my reports to her on that. And in order to make the squad a little more stable, the PS has also gone through an exercise of identifying officers to fill the positions which exist in the squad. And once those officers are identified and able to fill those positions, they would then move to contract employment and not short-term employment. And we hope to do that with at least 30 officers in this fiscal year, and it will reduce the reliance on that line item.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, would you be able to provide us in writing a breakdown of the unit and the number of officers assigned to the unit at the various divisions?
I undertake to do so, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Also, on line item 13, maintenance of vehicles. Minister, is this line item which deals with the maintenance of the vehicles for the predial larceny unit?
Yes, it does.
Minister, can you advise if the predial larceny vehicle in the central unit is functional?
It is impossible to say at this moment. The officers might be out there mashing it up as we speak.
Minister, can you advise how long the vehicle has not been functioning?
I'll be happy to give you the details in writing.
Minister, I see in the estimate for 2021 was 400,000. However, the revised estimate was only 362,000. The estimate was not utilized. Can you advise that why it is this estimate was not utilized to repair the vehicles for the South and Central Division of the pre-jail larceny squad?
But there's nothing to say that the estimates were not, those are estimates, and there's an allocation. So at the end of the fiscal year, as you may or may not know, ministries settle accounts up until midnight on September 30th. So this does not take into consideration payments actually made at the end of the year. When we have the outturn the fiscal year, we will know the exact figure. But in that document you've asked me to provide, which is the details of 13, I would be able to provide for you in real time what was done in the last fiscal.
Minister, yes, these are estimates, but what is actual in the public domain is that the vehicles at the pre-jail larceny unit for South and Central has not been functioning for the longest while.
Well,
that is actually in the public
the person
domain.
who put that
Can
in
you
the
give an undertaking how soon these vehicles will once more be functional? May I finish, please, Minister? Can you give an undertaking what timeline we are working with during this financial term to
I will
have
not
these
give such an undertaking.
Can I finish, please, Minister?
Yeah.
If you can kindly advise in this financial term under this line item when it is that we can expect to have these vehicles in South and Central functioning so that the pre-jail larcenies can efficiently and effectively carry out their function?
I cannot give that undertaking.
But
member.
you are the minister,
I cannot,
you're in charge.
No. You have a complete misunderstanding of a minister. I, in response to a question posed to me in the other place, I told the country about the bad behavior of delinquent officers who, once vehicles are given to them for use, they are damaged, destroyed, and used for personal. I also said that the PS has been asked to deal with that matter, and I said a few minutes ago that I'm satisfied that the PS is taking the appropriate steps. We are committed. There's no question that we are committed. I initiated a review of the pre-jail larceny squad in 2016, and we are committed to equipping these officers and to ensuring that they are there to support the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which is responsible for crime fighting in the country. I cannot, as a minister, say that what I would like to have done is done. I cannot say that, but I, of all the persons in this country, have signaled the significance to us in this country of a functioning pre-jail larceny squad.
Augustine.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just with regards to the Minister's comment on that you hope to have members of the pre-jail larceny squad move from short-term employment to contract employment. Has any engagement or any consideration been taken towards establishing a permanent establishment of pre-jail larceny officers to make it a permanent structure so that it is not changed or dismantled on the whims of, the political winds that may blow? And I know you have spoken a lot about establishing a pre-jail larceny squad, but the concern is that because of the conditions of employment being short-term and contract, that this squad and these officers could be removed at any time. Has any steps been taken to establish a permanent pre-jail larceny squad?
Thank you, Member. Those things have been considered, and as I said, in 2016, the report was commissioned. OLEP, the Office of Law Enforcement Policy, provided advice for us. There have been discussions with the Commissioner of Police, and there have been interventions by the Police 2nd Division Welfare Association, and it is one to deal with the squad in its present form. And the OLEP report pointed to absenteeism, engagement, more time being spent on non-agriculture matters, and so on. And it's been quite an effort to manage the operations of the squad. And eventually, if it is determined that this should be a permanent squad, if this should be a squad under the TTPS, then those steps will be taken. But in most places, like us, we have 6 law enforcement sections of the ministry. And managing those, given the nature of the ministry, is sometimes very, very difficult, because we have a dual role of the ministry itself and these officers having a line of responsibility to the Commissioner of Police under the law.
Member for Couva North.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, in your response, you indicated then under line item 22, the predial larceny squad, you're looking to move them to contract employment. However, when we look at 16 contract employment, the actual spend for 2020 was 12 million, similar in the revised estimate of 2021, but we are seeing a decrease in the estimate for 2022. If it is that we are moving this unit from short-term employment to contract in this financial term, then why it is we have a decrease of $2.16 million?
Because, as I've said, member, the Minister of Finance has directed and our permanent secretary has complied with the need to manage the resources in the ministry. So a reduced provision doesn't mean a reduced provision for the predial larceny squad. It means that we have looked at the numbers and we are providing for fewer. We are not going to fill contract positions because we believe that in the circumstances of the country, we can manage without certain positions being filled, contract positions.
Item 002.
Oh, no.
You still have
Yeah, I had another question.
item 001?
Yes.
Please
Item
proceed.
00196, fuel and lubricants. Minister, this estimate for 2021 was 800,000, but the revised estimate was 400,000. Can you say if this was a result, the reduce in the revised estimates to the estimate of 400,000, if this was a result of the vehicles of South and Central Trinidad not being functional for a major part of the financial term, which is why we are seeing such a significant reduction in the revised estimates versus what was estimated?
Remember, it's almost like a fairy tale, the vehicles not being functional in South and Central.
No, Minister, it's real. You could go down and visit the place.
Are these magical?
It's not a fairy tale.
Are these
Member for
magical?
Couva North, would you allow the minister to answer the
Are
question?
these
now?
magical vehicles that only work in North and other parts of the country and just don't work in South and Central? The provision is for an increase. The estimate is 500,000 for this fiscal, which represents an increase of 100,000.
Item 002, agriculture. Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, to the Honourable Minister, line item 01, travelling and subsistence. What we're seeing in this line item is a significant decrease again of $3.874 million. The actual spend for 2020 was $13 million. The revised estimate was $13.6 million for 2021, but the estimate for 2022 is $9.8 million. Minister, can you advise why the significant decrease in this line item?
Remember, it follows from the item that you had been pointing out before, salaries and allowances. The reason and the logic is the same. We are not making provision. There are 631 vacant positions without bodies. We are not making provision for travelling and subsistence claims in respect of those provisions. In addition to which, I also pointed out to the more astute management of claims. I pointed out that it is not unusual or was not unusual when Forestry Division came from the former Ministry of Housing and the Environment. When it came to this ministry in 2015, it brought with it years of traveling claims which were not submitted in the time limited, and it had been an issue, and I've said that the Minister of Finance has directed that there be more astute management of this in line with the regulation that requires officers to submit claims within a limited period. And we now believe that these claims, if submitted in the time limited, will result in us having to pay an estimate of 9.8 million in this fiscal.
Member for Cuba South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. On the said line item, travelling and subsistence, Minister, you actually incurred expenditure of $13.6 million approximately. And you indicated that, you just indicated to my colleague that about the submission of claims. Is it that claims were submitted late, or you found officers of the Ministry of Agriculture to be involved in questionable submission of claims?
No, the submissions were late, which in itself is questionable because there's a time limited for that. But the issue was the late submissions, and of course, once it's submitted late and in the volumes they were submitted, the auditing process that goes on, and the need to allocate funds and all of that. By the time we got to 2020, it resulted in back pay basically being paid.
So, in the last financial year, has anybody been held accountable based on your audit within your ministry and so on, disciplinary action being instituted against anyone?
I'll be happy to advise of that in writing.
You'll be happy to advise in writing, because as a complement of travelling officers, has it declined in the Ministry of Agriculture?
The establishment remains the same. The permanent establishment rate remains around 2015 in the permanent establishment. Of course, not all are travelling officers, but in the 631 vacant positions, some of them will be travelling officers. Now, I know that in dealing with the issue of travelling, the permanent secretary is also looking at the granular part of it, which is the actual claims. They're looking at patterns. So I know from my interactions with the permanent secretary that some officers, the claims are almost predictable, and the permanent secretary is paying careful attention to those patterns to ensure that the claims properly reflect the travelling which was done.
Good. Thank you, Minister.
Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to refer the Minister's attention to line item 08, rent, lease, office accommodation and storage. Minister, last year you told us that these funds was going to be utilized for the relocation of the Land Mapping and Surveys Department. Can you advise if a permanent location has been found?
No, we've not found a permanent location for our Surveys and Mapping Division.
Item 003. Item 004, item 006, Member for Cuba North.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to refer the Minister's attention to line item 08, rent, lease, office accommodation and storage. Minister, last year, under this line item, we requested copies of the lease agreement for office accommodation and storage. You said it would be provided in writing. However, when we got the response was no lease agreement currently exists under this line item. So no lease was provided. Can you advise if there's a lease that has now been entered into?
I would have to advise You have that in writing, member.
Minister, we are seeing an actual spend of 1.6 million, a revised estimate of 1.6 million for 2021. Monies are being spent without any kind of lease arrangement in place?
Well, I wouldn't say there's no lease arrangement in place. In fact, if you go to Frederick Street, you'll see the Surveys and Mapping Division in the place they've been for a long time. But as the Auditor General has pointed out, on numerous occasions, there are times when leases have come to an end and they have not been renewed on a timely basis. But it does not mean that the relationship between landlord and tenant and the obligation to pay does not exist.
I'm now seeing an estimate for 2022 under this line item of 800,000, a decrease of 847,000. Minister, can you advise how you came up with this figure?
The estimate is based on exactly what I said and what you, in fact, reminded all of us of, that we are actively engaged in efforts to relocate. This may or may not result in the payment of rent. We are looking at the facilities that are available to us, and that is why we've made that provision. And if it is that the efforts to relocate do not bear fruit in this fiscal, then we'd make the payments of rent from the overall allocation that is made to us.
Item 007, Member for Couva North.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to draw the Minister's attention to line item 08, Rent Lease Office Accommodation. Minister, in last Standing Finance Committee last year, similarly, we asked to provide a copy of the existing lease agreement for the property located in El Socorro. You gave that undertaking. However, when we received our bundles of documents, the response was no lease agreement currently exists. That's for Jatan Lane. Can you advise if a new lease has been entered into for this upcoming financial term?
Madam Chair, I'll have to advise of that in writing.
Member for Caroni Central.
Same line item, please, Madam Speaker, 08. There's a decrease, Minister, of $183,640. Can you indicate what is the reason for the decrease?
Member, I'll have to do that in writing. I undertake to do so.
Member for Caroni Central.
I move to line item 43, Security Services. The actual spent in 2021, well, the revised estimate is 571. I'm seeing a figure budgeted this financial year of $400,000, a decrease of 171,000. What will be the reason for this decrease in allocation to security services?
Madam Chair, the Permanent Secretary, the Minister, and the public sector has been directed by the Minister of Finance to manage our costs. We've, in the Land Management Division, we continue to increase the use of technology available to us, and across the ministry we continue to manage our security costs, and this represents the expectation that we'll continue to lower the cost of external security services.
Item 008, Member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 21, repair and maintenance of buildings. The actual spend for the estimate for 2021, was 100,000. However, the revised estimates was 22,000. Can the Minister advise why it is there's this significant disparity?
Madam Chair, as I said before, 22,600 represents what was incurred in the fiscal based on the publication of this, and it was an estimate. So you may spend less than or more than. In this case, we'll only know the exact figure when it is available at the end of the calendar year. But if there's a reduction, it has to do with us not spending the full amount of the estimate.
Line item 0.
Line item?
Item 08, rent, lease, office accommodation and storage. Minister, would you be able to provide us in writing the lease that would be covered under this line item for the upcoming financial term?
I will do so, Madam Chair.
Subhead 03, minor equipment purchases. I'm sorry, item 010, forestry.
Thank you.
Yes, Member for Kubano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, in 2021, line item 05, telephone, the estimate was 350,000. However, the revised estimate was $1.2 million. Can the Minister advise on this significant increase on this line item?
Madam Chair, I had already pointed out that the numbers in some years had to do with, and I specified telephones and internet and security, had to do with debts inherited and the efforts made to pay down those debts. And I also pointed out to the stricter management of telephone expenses and the shift towards the technology-based telephone system. And this represents, is what the PS estimates as the likely cost of telephones for this section of the ministry in this fiscal.
So, Minister, are you saying that the additional cost from the 350,000, what was budgeted for, to the 1.2, was to pay outstanding arrears?
Madam Chair, as I've said on so many occasions, there is a difference between actuals and estimates. The actual in 2020 was 336. There was a 2021 estimate. There's a revised estimate based on a projection, and there is a projection now based on what transpired during the last fiscal, which we would know at the end of the fiscal year, at the end of the calendar year, when the outturn is available, and then we'd understand what was actually incurred in the last fiscal.
Taking into consideration the actual, as you have pointed out, Honourable Minister, of 2020 at 336,000, why it is really budgeting 100,000 for this line item?
Madam Chair, as I've said on many occasions before, that represents what the Permanent Secretary and the Ministry believe to be the likely cost of telephone charges in this fiscal year. If it turns out that it is less than that, the money will be used elsewhere. If it turns out that it's more than that, the budgeting process allows for us to pay our bills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 43, security services. I'm seeing here a decrease of $1.6 million in this line item. Can the Honourable Minister advise the reason for the decrease?
Madam Chair, I thought I was making life easy, but I must admit that I failed on that one. I pointed to security services and telephones as something that, in particular with forestry, we inherited. I answered a question in the last fiscal year in the other place on security services, and in answering that question, I pointed to debts inherited. In the case of Forestry Division, what we grappled with was the fact that there was no evidence that in that period, 2010 to 2015, that these companies were even engaged. There were no contractual documents, there were no tender documents. All we got was an avalanche of claims. In fact, Madam Chair, I'll go so far as to say One day in the last fiscal, I went to the Caroni Bird Sanctuary, that pristine spot, very close to my friend's constituency, if not in his constituency. No, it's close, not in. And I saw the security booth, remember, embarrassing. The security guard was operating a parlor and offered me a Fanta for $3 because he had not been paid. And upon investigation, I found that he was yet another person working for yet another security company who operated between that 2010 to 15 period and thereafter without. So this money represents, as I said before, a continuous effort to pay those debts, reduce reliance as much as possible, manage things, and estimate going forward what, with prudent management, the likely costs will be. And all of what I've just said is on the record in response to that question which was asked of me in the other place.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Minister, can you advise under this line item if there are any outstanding bills yet to be paid?
I would answer that in writing.
And a decrease in this line item, will that be sufficient for the upcoming financial year?
It is what we estimate, member. That is what I've said. That's what I said. Based on prudent management, on managing the resources, we have estimated that Forestry Division is likely to incur $2 million in security costs in this fiscal year.
Subhead 03, minor equipment purchases, item 001, general administration. Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, there was no estimate for 2021 under line item 01. However, there was a spend of $1,050,000. Can the Minister advise what this spend was for?
Place you a few times, but I would provide the response in writing.
Item 002, agriculture. Item 003, animal production and health. Item 004, horticulture. Item 007, land management. Item 008, fisheries. Item 010, forestry. Subhead 04, current transfers and subsidies. Item 002, Commonwealth bodies, member for Cuba North.
Sorry, another item.
All right. Item 003, United Nations organizations. Item 005, non-profit institutions. This is where you are?
Yes.
Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, 04000501, Caribbean Fisheries Training and Development Institute. There has been a decrease of $2.2 million. Can the Minister advise the reason for the reduction in the 2022 allocation?
Madam Chair, this institution has been under review. We made some changes via the cabinet, and during the COVID period, of course, this institution exists mainly to provide training to citizens in skills related to fisheries, boat operators and in small engine repairs and so on. But it also provides training to the Tobacco House of Assembly and to some territories of the islands, in particular Antigua. With the COVID restrictions, of course, they had limited functions. And we've also been taking a second review at CFTDI. We're expecting this fiscal year to make some changes and to deal with what we feel as needs to be done there. And we believe that the allocation, the estimate, will cover the cost of the institute for this fiscal year.
Member for Kumota Mantinilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, Honourable Minister, line item 08, TTPSA. I'm just wondering if this program has been stopped or transferred to another ministry.
Member, this was actually introduced for the first time in the last fiscal year. So it's something new. You'd be surprised to know that that the TSPCA had not been provided with a subvention before, and this was introduced in the last fiscal.
Member for Kubano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 04, Sugarcane Feed Center. There's a decrease in this line item of $2.4 million. Can the Minister explain this decrease?
Sugarcane Feed Center member has been with us for over 40 years. It's outlived even sugarcane and sugarcane feed. And this has been a facility that has been under close examination. In 2015, I commissioned a review of it. And in the last year, we've done some exercises there. It's a unionized employer. And we believe that in this fiscal, we would make some changes, of course, in consultation with the recognized majority union. And we believe that the provision being made of $6 million would cover the costs we are likely to incur in this fiscal year. And when I say in consultation and changes and so on, it's meant to make better use of that asset that is available. I had said before that it is the ideal location for a farm school for young persons in particular. So there are things that we are looking at to position this to be of better use without having to increase the expense profile.
Member for Kuba South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The Minister was able to tickle my interest as it relates to the Sugarcane Feed Center. Minister, you indicated that you or your ministry is currently involved in a restructuring program at the Sugarcane Feed Center.
A review.
That review entails any intended job losses and so on?
Well, I was very clear to say anything we do will, of course, be in consultation with the recognized majority union. And that has nothing to do with job loss, as you know, as a trade unionist. It may mean having to use workers differently and to provide services in a different way. So we've not gotten to the point of reduction in numbers, but it's a very important asset, particularly for Central Trinidad and the young people in Central Trinidad. And we believe that that after 40 years, we really need to look at making it more efficient.
No problem in terms of what you have stated. In relation to your allocation of or projected expenditure of $6 million, did it include, and I know you may tell me the collective bargaining process has not been completed, but be very mindful that it may warrant additional expenditure to cover that particular issue when it is concluded. And if you could inform the meeting how many periods of the collective bargaining process is outstanding.
Well, I remember I'm not in a position. The CPO deals with that, and I am not in a position to say. But
as line minister, you may be keeping an eye or have it on your radar.
But Member for Kuba South, you've asked this line of questioning earlier, and I think the response in that other ministry, this falls under the Minister of Finance and the CPO, and therefore it might be more fairly a question posed to the Minister of Finance and not the line minister.
I am guided, Madam Chair, just pointing the Minister in relation to his projected expenditure of the need for an increase probably in the mid-year.
Madam Chairman, I just want to say that these are estimates and appropriations will be made in the mid-year if necessary. Nobody can look into the future and see what will happen. You don't have a crystal. You don't have a crystal.
So item 007, households. Now, you see when we're not being efficient, what happens? Member for Cuba, no, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 08, Trinidad and Tobago Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Thank you. Honorable Minister, this institution actual allocation for 2020 was $250,000. However, the Trinidad and Tobago Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, there's nothing being estimated in the 2022 financial year. And we see within recent time, animals are being struck down on the side of the road, and institutions like this is not receiving any sort of financial allocation. Can you kindly advise why there's no allocation for this institution?
Thank you very much. And I would go so far as to say that the decision to introduce this subvention, was a recommendation of the Honorable Minister of Finance, and I have listened to the Honorable Minister of Finance, and he's spoken about errors and omissions, and I'm sure he's going to correct that. But I myself, when he cornered me one day and accused me of all sorts of things, I was shocked to know that the TTS-PCA had never received a subvention. We have passed, as you know, last year July, this government passed the most modern legislation for the protection of animals. And prior to that, appointed and engaged the attention of 17 groups to prepare animal welfare standards for the first time in the country's history. And we have demonstrated, just as you have just have, our love for animals. And the permanent secretary that sits next to me went so far as to personally present the subvention check to the TTSPC, leaving me out of the photo opportunity. So I think the Minister of Finance has taken note. The subvention, the intention, in fact, the cabinet decision was to grant them the subvention for 3 years in the first instance.
Item 007, households. Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to draw the Minister's attention to line item 07, Emergency Food Support Measure COVID-19. This line item is what received the transfer of $57,310,000 for the food box, the NAMDEVCO food box in the mid-year review from the 500 million stimulus package. The Minister indicated it was approximately $80 million that was utilized for that program. Can the Honorable Minister advise why it is that we see in here, the revised estimate, only 62 million transferred to this ministry and not the 500 million that was supposed to be utilized for agriculture? Now, in your opening remarks, Honorable Minister, you indicate several plans and promises. We heard those plans and promises last year, but for the entire financial term, none of those promises materialize. And you are coming here again, making lots of plans and promises, not with the 500 million, but with 300 million less. So can you kindly shed some light on this?
Remember, you've made so many improper assertions there. I listened to the Honourable Opposition Leader make some promises, which I've heard for the last 15 years from the opposition, and I'm not sad. But I didn't make promises. I said specifically what we are going to do. May I remind you, member, that reflecting on the period 2010 to 2015, if I give you the rest of the fiscal year, you cannot point me to one project in agriculture that your government achieved. You cannot point me to one, neither a PPP or anything, a private sector project.
I can point you to
and
several.
I could say confidently.
I can point you to several work that they did.
I could say confidently that there is at this time $200 million in private sector projects in agriculture. On the Trinidad Express this week, there's a company called Novo Pitiad, a private sector company that has commissioned, it's completed, and they've started distribution from a $60 million private sector facility. If that is not confidence in the government and our ability to provide the support, then you will never find confidence anywhere. And this line item has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with the $500 million. I've been careful in explaining, as the minister said yesterday, the $500 million is a fund housed in the Ministry of Finance. And in the mid-year review, the minister made provision to transfer from that fund a $62.5 million figure for the food box program for the period May 2021 to the end of September 2021. When he referred to the food box program, he referred to the overall cost of it, the cost incurred previously, prior to the mid-year review. And this represents the cost during the period. And as I said before, the food box program, this was funded to the end of September 2021. This figure does not represent the actuals. We will know that at the end of the calendar year when we see the outturn of the last fiscal. This has nothing to do with the many other things in the $500 million. I heard you say the 500 is reduced, and I thought I was doing a good deed by explaining it from the outset, but I realized that I did not. So I would repeat, it's a fund. The way the government operates, the way the state manages its budget, it started off as the Minister of Finance making available a fund of $500 million. Now, I could have done like you did in August 2015 and awarded 10 road repair contracts via EMBD, which cost $400 million. And I would have been able to come here today and say I spent $400 of the $500 million. In fact, I would have gone out there like you and cut ribbons on all those 10 roads. But at the end of the $400 million in road expenditure under EMBD, all that has happened
Minister, I didn't cut any ribbon. I think you're misleading by saying that I went out to cut ribbon.
There isn't a significant 2-acre plot of land serviced by those $400 million in roads. And you would see in another item where this year, out of this $700 and something million allocation, I have to service a loan by EMBD, a principal payment, a loan taken arising out of one of those construction contracts awarded by EMBD in the Caroni VSEP. So it is not a fairy tale that as a minister I have inherited tremendous debts from your administration, which I'm in my 6th year of trying to manage. And it's not fairy tale, it's in the estimates to which, and you would never, when we get to that page, ask me what is that line item of the 29 million for PSAL and the 90 million for EMBD. You wouldn't ask me that. You'd ask me all these $1 questions, but you would not ask me those $100 million questions. And what I've articulated and gone so far as even the Minister of Finance has put it in his budget statement, the $500 million, the $500 million includes $11 million to my colleague, the member for Komoto Manzanilla for Plumita. Not only is it there, when you get to the development program, you will see specific allocations of Plumita. I spoke about homesteads in El Reposo. I've heard you talk about young people wanting jobs. Well, young people want places to live and places to plant. And the homestead program would cost us about $250 million spread over a few fiscal years. And next year, this fiscal, of the $300 million that I say we will actually pay out, part of that is for the homestead program in Talparo and one in El Reposo in Sangre Grande. I've spoken about digital transformation.
So, Minister, I've allowed you some leeway based on the intervention by the member on the other side, speaking with respect to promises not materializing, which I thought you needed to respond to. But I think the question was really on line item 07, and I think you've answered that, and the 5 minutes is now up.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 40, gratuity to contract officers. This was estimated at 5.5 million. However, the revised estimate was 2.3 million. Can the Minister advise this a significant disparity? Reason why?
Madam Chair, yet again I say that this has to do, these gratuities, it's a liability that arises at the end of the contract period. The contract period varies. It goes through an auditing process, a very complicated process. The Minister of Finance was the subject of a joint select committee of which I was a part, a standing committee of the Parliament, Madam President, and the Minister of Finance has directed that ministries and permanent secretaries in particular accelerate the settlement of these claims. The figure varies from year to year, and during the financial year, you would see that what you see there is an increase over the revised estimate, and the figure there represents what we estimate would be paid out in this fiscal year.
Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, can the Minister advise the number of contract officers that gratuity payment are outstanding to?
Madam Chair, I'll have to advise of that in writing.
Thank you.
Item 008, subsidies. Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 01, Agricultural Incentive Program. This program has decreased by $12.1 million. Minister, can you advise the reason for the decrease in this line item?
Madam Chair, I've said in previous appearances in this committee and also in responses to questions in the Parliament that in 2015, I met at least 7 years, maybe longer, of unpaid claims for subsidies and incentives. With the support of the Minister of Finance, the provision each year continued to be increased for us to cover those debts. My colleague sitting on the right of me, Senator Avinash Singh, in one of his budget contributions in the other place, surprised me when he said In 5 years, we had paid out $250 million in subsidies, incentives, and flood assistance claims. So what this represents is that this represents making a significant dent in what was owed and had piled up and what we continue to accrue. And I could safely say now, at the end of the last fiscal year, by 30th September 2021, we had paid out $15 million in claims. And the figure shown there represents what we believe we will pay out in this fiscal year. So that we've made tremendous strides in reducing those liabilities, in bringing them current, and at any time, the waiting time of the average person is 7 months or less compared to 7 years or more.
Member for Cuba North.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 02, incentive program. Honourable Minister, this line item incentive program, from my understanding, is for the reimbursement or the rebate for registered fisher folks. Can you kindly advise why it is the revised estimates is nil for 2021 when it was estimated at 500,000? Is it that no rebate was provided for this financial term for our fisher folk?
Madam Chair, I'll have to give that information in writing.
Item 009, other transfers. Item 010, other transfers abroad. Item 011, transfers to state enterprises. Subhead 06, current transfers to statutory boards and similar bodies. Honourable members, we will now...
Line item under this head.
Yes,
line item 08.
We now go into that head. And we will look at that head in the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure of statutory boards and similar bodies and of the Tobago House of Assembly. At 369, it's a summary statement. We now go into the details. So for your guidance, member, we are at page 473, 08, Agriculture Society of Trinidad and Tobago, subhead 01, personal expenditure, item 001, general administration. Member for Cuba North?
Yes. What page again, Madam Chair?
We are at page 473.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions on item 001?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Under general administration, line item 01, salaries and cost of living allowance. The estimate for 2021 was $537,600. However, the revised estimate was $163,290. Can the minister advise the reason for this decrease in the estimate and the revised estimate?
So I was holding to see if there was another question you were going to ask, but I think, as we have said before, this, during these proceedings this afternoon, the minister will give details for all 01 falling under his ministry. Okay?
Can the minister advise if it is he has met with the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago and discuss the matters that they are being affected by under this line item?
I won't allow that question under this item. Okay? Anything else you have under item 001?
The line item 06, remuneration for board members. There isn't an estimate for 2022. and no estimate for 2021. Can the Minister advise the reason for no estimate for 2022?
Thank you, Member. Member, I credit my predecessor, Devant Maharaj, for raising publicly a number of issues relating to the Agricultural Society. We went one step further and commissioned through the Honorable Minister of Finance an audit by the Central Audit Committee of the Ministry of Finance. A report was tendered to us in 2019. A copy of that report was made to the ASTT. The Permanent Secretary has had numerous meetings with the ASTT. The ASTT has received numerous letters from me pointing to an increase in liability of about $4 million related to failed litigation involving the ASTT and its then president. There are judgments in the court that have not been paid, judgment gathering interest. There is, as far as I know, one judgment creditor who has taken bankruptcy proceedings against the former president. And part of that audit report pointed to the fact that there was no authority for the payment of board fees to the Agricultural Society. And the Permanent Secretary, on the basis of that, did what she is required to do and stopped making those payments, and those payments are no longer provided for.
I'm not sure which audit report the Honourable Minister is referring to. What has been brought to my attention is that no audit report has been signed off.
Okay, all right. So
can the Minister advise?
1 minute, please. I'm not going to allow us to go into audit reports. I allow the Minister to give you an explanation because of the question you posed, which in itself should not have been allowed because, as you quite rightly pointed out, there's no estimate for 2021. So that this should have been an issue which was settled in 2021. I allowed it because I figured that we all knew here. But in terms of the audit report and so on and all those details, I'm not going to allow us to further expand that discussion.
Thank you for
Anything
guidance,
else
Madam
under
Chair.
01?
Yes, with respect to the remuneration of the board members, can the Minister advise if there is in fact a board in place at this time?
Yes, consequent upon the ASCT wrote to me earlier this year, advising me that elections were held and there's a board in place.
And this is a B board, right?
Remember, I am totally lost.
Okay, does the operations of this board, or is there to be remuneration for the board that is in place, sir?
Remember, the risk of offending the Honorable Chair of this committee, I gave a lengthy and, from what Madam Chair has said to us, unnecessary and ultra-vires the rules of this committee. I gave you a lengthy explanation of an item that does not exist. And it's not the first one. I gave you 2 lengthy explanations of the 500 million which does not exist. Let us not abuse the committee.
All right. So, Member for Couva South, 1 minute, please. Can we move on? I'm not allowing any more questions on the 01-001-06. There is no estimate.
Can the Minister provide a copy of the audit report that he used in his response?
I'm sure
he made reference to that.
I am sure, Member for Couva, there are other facilities open to you to investigate and interrogate these matters that you may be of interest. Yes? Let's go on. 02,
Madam
goods
Chair, that
and
we
services.
must ensure the interests of the minority.
02, goods and services. Item 001, general administration. 09, National Agricultural Marketing and Development Corporation. We are at page 478. Subhead 01, Personal Expenditure. Item 001, General Administration. Subhead 02, Goods and Services. Item 001, General Administration. Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to draw the Minister's attention to line item 28, Other Contracted Services. This has an increase of $7.7 million. Can the Minister explain what these additional other contracted services is going to be for this financial term?
Madam Chair, based on one, the food boxes program, which is continuing and which is continuing out of NAMDEVCO's Woodford Lodge facility, which is ironically in the constituency of Cuba North. I don't think my friend is aware of that. We intend to upgrade that facility so that it could continuously carry out this program. It's just a warehouse facility. We intend to convert it into a complete packing house. We intend to upgrade the facility at Piaco, which requires some significant work, and we are entering into a public-private partnership in relation to the unfinished, incomplete, yet comprehensively launched Brecon Castle facility, which is in my friend's constituency, Cuba South, Mr. Indar Singh. A facility that in July 2015 was opened with much fanfare, notwithstanding the fact that power was not connected, the place was empty, it was a shell, the lease for the land was not in place, the operation plan or anything. So that 7.7 is meant to supplement or to be NAMDEVCO's contribution. So what I've just described will be funded out of the stimulus. The 300, we had already committed ourselves to that expenditure, executed in this fiscal, and that is part of NAMDEVCO's contribution, amongst other things related to the functioning of NAMDEVCO.
Member for Colony Central.
Madam Chair, line item 23, fees. Can the Minister indicate what is the purpose of these fees? 23, line item 23. What is expenditure used for?
Madam Chair, I'll give that in writing.
Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 16, contract employment. Can the Minister advise the number of persons in the organization on contract employment and the number of vacant positions?
Madam Chair, I'll give that information in writing.
Other contracted, okay, all right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Subhead 03, minor equipment purchases, item 001. Subhead 04, current transfers and subsidies, item 007, households, item 009, other transfers. 11, the Zoological Society of Trinidad and Tobago, we are at page 486. Subhead 01, personal expenditure, item 001. Subhead 02, goods and services, item 001, member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to draw the Minister's attention to line item 12, material and supplies. This line item has a decrease of $1.6 million. Can the Minister advise why this decrease in 1.6 million?
The zoo member has since 2007 been doing this upgrade, and it is funded in part by the zoo through this line item and in part by the IDF, which is coming up later on, so that this represents the advanced state of the main project, which we expect to be completed by April 2022, and this simply represents the completion of the spend that the zoo itself incurs on that project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 16, contract employment. Can the Minister advise the positions in contract employment and the salaries for those contract positions? And can the Minister also explain for this line item why there's a decrease of $217,000 if it is that there are persons who are going to be laid off?
Madam Chair, the provision made in the past had to do with my friends managed to go for 5 years without even paying attention to the need to renew these contracts. We inherited when we did in fact renew the contracts, we inherited liability for the gratuity that is payable at the end of the contract year. So, for example, having missed the formal renewal of 2 contract periods, when we got to having to renew for the 3rd one, we inherited gratuity payments which were due for 3 contract periods. And what you see appearing before represents the settlement of those liabilities, and what you see estimated now represents the estimate of what we are likely to incur in this fiscal year in relation to those contract positions.
Subhead 03, minor equipment purchases. Subhead 04, current transfers and subsidies, item 007, household. Honorable members, we'll now move on to the draft estimates of development program. We're on page 151. Head 09, Development Program Consolidated Fund, item 002, Productive Sectors. Member for Cuba North.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Line item 053, St. Augustine Nurseries. Honorable Minister, this line item was estimated for $500,000 in 2021, but the revised estimate is only $102,000. Can the Honorable Minister explain the significant difference there?
Madam Chair, at the start, in my opening, I made 5 points, and I pointed to the fact that for 60% of the last fiscal year, we did not have the full complement of staff in the ministry, as with all other ministries, and where it affected us was in our ability to execute these infrastructure projects, where it involved both internal staff and external contractors. And I said that we used the opportunity to do some more planning in terms of this fiscal, in terms of execution. And throughout you would see, I made the point that throughout you would see in this, the development program, you would see a shortfall of $30 million. It may be less than that when we get the final outturn, but it really was on account of those COVID factors. And the line item St. Augustine Nurseries represent one of many in this DP, which did not utilize the full allocation.
Item 003, Economic Infrastructure. Honorable members, item 003 spans 4 pages. Therefore, I will also announce the project groups. D, Fishing. Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 278, Port of Spain Wholesale Fish Market. This was allocated 500,000, but no monies were spent in 2021 based on the figure in front of us here from the revised estimate. Can the Honourable Minister advise why it is?
Madam Chair, for the reason I just outlined, it was not possible to execute this project in the last fiscal.
Member for Carnegie, Cuba North, I'm sorry.
Line item 287, upgrade of fish landing sites. Minister, this line item was allocated $2 million in 2021 with a lot of promises that you made for fish landing sites at several locations across the country. However, what we see in here is only approximately 10% of that was utilized, $292,000. And at this point in time, there are several fish landing sites, including that in Orange Valley, where fishermen have to go through the rubble and the rocks to get to their vessel when they're going out and when they're coming in. Can you advise if this $3 million that is allocated for this line item will include the upgrade of the fish landing site for Orange Valley? And if you can elaborate also on the additional plans that you have taken into consideration, what was not completed in the last financial term?
Member, I would have been able to answer that with great confidence as I answered your colleague for Point of Pierre, Member David Lee, when I said to him very clearly that Claxton Bay would definitely be executed in this fiscal year, given his numerous representations, his discussions with me, and so on. I have never seen or heard you at a fish landing site anywhere in this universe. I have never. You've made no representation. You've made no representation on behalf of your own constituency. Whether it is food boxes, you
were sleeping like Heinz.
You've never come to the Woodford Lodge facility.
You don't know where it is?
You don't know where this is. But
don't know.
to answer your question, NAMDEVCO, we're talking about the facility there. NAMDEVCO intends to spend money again at the facility in Orange Valley. We have made representation to the corporation. If you talk to them, they will tell you that, to repair the road leading to that facility. We have been working with the fisher folk and the former MP Ramona Ramdial, who I see more often than you, to deal with the fish landing site. But I am on record as saying that these sites, there are 64 landing sites in this country, and I've said that many of them are used by bona fide fisher folk, but they're also places of criminal activities and places where riffraffs engage and so on. And we have continuously spent, unlike you who built a fish landing site in Grand Riviere that is nowhere near the sea, and one in Guayari that is $80 million but is in the middle of the sea, so you can't do nothing with it. We intend, with the little that we have, to continue to improve the lives of the fisher folk, including the ones in Orange Valley who know where I live and can meet me more often than they can meet you.
Minister, after all your misleading comments, I still put back the question to you. You have not answered the question. $2 million was allocated for this line item, and only $292,000 was spent. you have failed to implement the plans and the promises you made last year. And can you give us at this committee, despite all the rhetoric and all the misleading information you choose to present, can you advise if that is going to be repeated in this financial term with this $3 million being allocated, or you're going to have some level of commitment to wake up and do your job?
Remember, I've made a few things clear this afternoon. One is that I do my job and your job. The second thing is that I've made it clear that COVID, I've made it clear also that,
well, you will get all
that a lot of these projects have been constrained by COVID restrictions, curfew times, the shutdown of construction activity, and so on. And I've also said that we are committed to spend this $3 million to do what needs to be done, including MP David Lee's project in Claxton Bay, including the ones I've said Namdevco, and wherever else we need to, recognizing that this is a continuous spend and we cannot spend on everything every time. And it helps if conscientious members of Parliament, like Mr. Tanku does, like even Ms. Amin does, conscientious members of Parliament make representations.
Member for Central.
Thank you. Madam Chair, same line item 287. Can the Minister undertake to inform this House in writing the proposed project at a different location and the costing a sum of $3 million, please?
Madam Chair, I will do that.
E. Forestry. Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 23, Forestry Access Road. This was budgeted for in 2021 at $2 million. Only 1.5 was utilized, and there's no budget allocation for 2022. Can the Minister advise if this project has been completed, or what is the status with respect to the forestry access roads?
Madam Chair, this is an ongoing, this is not, it's roads, and we have forestry access roads, so in every fiscal year we do work on forestry access roads. This year, the road program is being funded out of two particular items. One I spoke about earlier, and the Minister of Finance announced in the budget, out of the stimulus. And we also have an allocation elsewhere in these provisions for road works. So it is not that we are not doing any works, we are funding it out of two areas that are elsewhere in the provisions.
F. Land Management Services. Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to refer the Minister's attention to line item 67, surveys and subdivision of state land for distribution to farmers. This item was budgeted for in 2021 at $200,000, but none was utilized. Can the Minister advise why?
Madam Chair, this line item existed when the state had to undertake surveying exercises to survey and create what we call food crop projects, and it was for payment to be made to private land surveyors. A lot of this work has already been done, and what we've been focusing on is delivering on the actual leases. And another policy change took place where the intended lessees are required to pay the surveying cost. So what we've been doing is, with this line item, is paying down some of the outstanding bills. And again, from the stimulus, we have made provision there to do an exercise to be funded out of there on the matter of land surveying.
Member for Cuba North.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to refer the Minister's attention to line item 69, Establishment of a Land Management Authority. Again, this line item was allocated 500,000 for 2021. However, nothing was utilized. Can the Minister advise why?
Madam Chair, it's mainly because what we've done so far has been, I don't want to say free work, but work that did not incur costs. So what we have done in the last fiscal through Cabinet is to appoint a committee to do the work that will determine what a single point of authority for sales state land in the country would look like. And that committee has been working. They've tendered an interim report. Some of what they've recommended is being implemented, and eventually in this country we will have some sort of single point of authority for land management, whether it is a new authority or a collaborative mechanism. As it is now, we know that it requires an IT backbone, and that is what I spoke about, the 18.5 million we've allocated to execute that. In fact, this is our 6th year of work on that, and we have now via iGovTT entered into an arrangement to purchase the IT, the hardware, and part of this work. So that line item will continue to appear there, and it is only when we actually incur costs it will be reflected.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Minister, would you be kind to provide us with the names of the person appointed to that committee and the proposed remuneration that they would be receiving?
Remember, I just said they worked for free. They're all from the public sector and so on. I just said they work for free.
Thank you. Can you provide us with a list of the names of the person?
I will. Sure.
Thank you. Line item 071, Establishment of Land Adjudication Tribunal, estimated for $1 million. Nothing was utilized there in that line item. Can the Minister advise why?
Madam Chair, this is as a result of legislative work undertaken by the Honourable Attorney General, and this is part of the 4 pieces of legislation which were passed in June 2018, and different aspects of the work is being done, including that work on the Land Management Authority. In the last fiscal, we did not reach to the point of having to appoint the tribunal, because the preliminary work really involves a desktop exercise involving the survey plans and the aerial surveys, which will be used as part of the adjudication process. And again, when the tribunal is appointed, then you would see expenses being reflected under that line item.
Age, Research and Development, Member for Caroni East.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, line item number 559, the Zoonotic Disease Management Plan. I see 100,000 was budgeted in 2021, but none in 2022. Could you give me an idea of what this plan is in terms of the National Management Plan of Zoonosis, as well as why hasn't anything been budgeted, given the fact that these viruses and diseases could cause such a devastating impact on our society?
Right. Remember, that is simply because the ministry has the capacity to do this work, and the work that has been undertaken so far has been done by the ministry. Sorry. If it becomes necessary if in having to implement something, it becomes necessary to access funding under this development program, then the ministry will via funds from within the development program. But so far, the work that we've been able to do has really been done using our internal ministry resources.
Okay, thank you.
Member for Kumucha Manzanilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. through you, Honorable Minister, line item 544. I am happy to see that we have Mappa Farm, and you, Minister, and Junior Minister know the value of Mappa Farms, and I hope that lots of attention will be there because it's a propagation unit. I see 400,000 allocated there, and I know with the new fiscal year, more and more resources will go towards this area to be one of the areas to feed the nation.
Member for Caroni Central.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, I'm trying to do 536 and 548 at the same time. Can you indicate where these projects will be undertaken and whether there are any facilities within Caroni Central which will benefit from these programs?
536. Remember, I think I've said it previously that the interest community-based aquaculture on the whole has been about tilapia, and there was significant interest in the past with communities and aquaculture. The ministry itself has had and still have in Sugarcane Feed Center a facility. There's been reduced interest in it, and we have not been actively promoting community aquaculture because we continue to do the training. We have the training that is available. We have the extension support that is available. And if it is that your community, you find that there is interest in there, we'd be very happy to consider it. So it all depends on the approaches, but a lot of work has already been done on aquaculture. And if there is an interest in your constituency, the permanent secretary, I'm sure, would be happy to hear from you. Did you point to 548?
548 as well.
548 is really the project at Chagaramas that has been reinvigorated. I'm sure you received our Grow Trinbago seed packages. Those were produced at the National Seed Bank in Chagaramas. You're shaking your head. Remember, you didn't get the beautiful packages?
No.
I'm astonished.
Yeah.
Well, those seeds, the packages, 50,000 of those which are distributed across the country to members of Parliament.
We will still be happy to receive them at this point in time.
Yes, I would make sure you do. Senator Singh will take responsibility. Anyway, the seed bank is that place where the ministry produce seeds for sale to the national public at highly subsidized rates. It is really some of the traditional seeds and also cassava. That project is one that we revived post 2015. It's doing well, and in the last fiscal, the main issue down there has been water, and in the project that you see there is in two parts. One is a tank farm that would supply the water needs of the facility. That the contractor is going to be on site from Sunday, and the project is expected to take 60 days and will give us access to about 20,000 liters of water on a daily basis. And the second part of that is to restore a well that has been out of service for a while, and we believe in consultation with WASA that if we restore that, we'd be able to permanently solve that water issue down there. You may or may not have seen an request for expression of interest published by the ministry for private partnership in the development of a modern nursery down on that site, and that is recognizing that Northwest Trinidad, we believe, is under service in terms of nursery facilities, and also it is a step towards having more private sector involvement in the development and provision of planting material to farmers across the country. And the intention, I want to tell you, is that if we get more private persons involved, they would be able to focus on one aspect of the planting material, including edibles and ornamentals, and the ministry will focus on doing contract orders for farmers so that we could focus on delivering to a farmer 5,000 plants of a specific type, while the private sector do the general public in terms of smaller amounts.
Gouverneur? Okay. I, Production and Marketing, member for Couva North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to draw the Honourable Minister's attention to line item 346, wholesale market upgrade at Macoya. Minister, this line item was estimated in 2021. There was an allocation for the 2021 estimate. However, there wasn't any for the revised estimate. It appears that no work took place, or I don't know if the works took place for free. But can you advise us if it is that what was projected to be done with this $500,000 was completed, and if this allocation for 2022 is for new works or outstanding?
Member, you'd be happy to know that through the two wholesale markets, the one at Macoya and one at Davie, $250 million in produce passed through there on an annual basis. In the period 2016 to 18, NAMDEVCO upgraded both wholesale markets. This particular one is upgraded to the tune of about $8 million, making it safer, accommodating more farmers, and being able to engage in wholesale trade at a more significant level and dealing with some of the traffic issues. What you see there, 500,000, was to complete, was to do some minor works which remain before we get into the further expansion of that facility in Macoya.
Member for Maruga Tableland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I would just like the Minister with regards to line item 347, if he could give us a breakdown as to how the ministry plans to outroll this line item.
Thank you very much for that question, Member. Well, you see Hill Rise there. So the ministry, this is a new line item, and I see my colleague, the Minister of Planning and Development there, and I want to tell you that she's almost entirely responsible for that line item. And it deals with a recognition that comes out of the work we've been doing, and COVID in particular, that some of these subsectors require a little more support than we have traditionally given. So Hill Rise, for example, your farmers are there. They have land issues, as you know. They have processing issues, packaging issues, market issues, and we've made a lot of headway in terms of dealing with some of them. And they would benefit from a part of this, because even as we launched the cooperatives project, the question is where they will continue to get the product, where they'll continue to get the packaging. You know, we've entered into an arrangement with the private sector to give them support. And this funding, specifically on Hill Rise, part of this will go towards supporting those farmers down there. Likewise with honey, Trinidad and Tobago has been the subject of a complaint to the CCJ about honey. We have a lot of threats to our market. We have an excellent product that our beekeepers provide, and this is meant to give them additional support in meeting some of the challenges of the marketplace. And forestry products, as you know, we took the step of banning the export of teak except in some specific forms. It had to do with the fact that, notwithstanding an investment made over more than 60 years in pine and teak in Trinidad and Tobago, for a significant part of that period, the teak was just being harvested at subsidized prices and being exported as logs. And we were not, our sawmillers, including yours in your community, were not benefiting from that. So we've done a few things. One is to ban the export of teak in that form. Two is in making the annual allocation of fields a more transparent process. Three, in enforcing the law and the regulations on the sawmillers. So those who are poor performers will exit the industry, and those who can be brought up to scratch will be brought up to scratch. So that funding is also to give support on that aspect of diversification in relation to those types of industries. And again, this is open to suggestions from members of Parliament for those who believe that a particular aspect of what happens in their community requires support.
Thank you, Minister. I will write to such.
Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honourable Minister, thank you for your explanation as to the status of agricultural products under head 347 and the crisis that we are in now that you're now seeking to address. However, what we would like to get from the Minister is a listed breakdown, in writing preferably, of the expenditure items projected for each of these niche products as described. We'd like to know how much money is to be assigned, to whom it is going to be assigned, which company, which contractor, which businessman, which farmer. That's the information we'd like to get, Minister.
Thank you very much.
Can I get a commitment that you would provide same?
Of course.
Thank you very much.
Member for Cuba North. J, other services. K, member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 001, provision of agricultural access to targeted commodities and strategic crops. Estimated at 5.5 million, but only 747,000 was utilized for 2021. Can the Minister kindly advise what is the status with respect to this project?
Madam Chair, that is what I alluded to earlier. I said that our road repair program is funded in two different places, and now the third one being out of the stimulus. The ministry has, since 2015, we've consistently done road repairs. I could say that in the last 5 years, we've repaired 105.78 kilometers of road at a cost of $27 million. I heard a murmur about south, central, north, that sort of thing. Well, I don't think you'll be surprised to know that of that 105.78 kilometers, 97% have been in South and Central Trinidad through no strange science, and a few have been in Northeast, and one or two along the East-West corridor. And part of it has to do with the amount, the allocation that was available. And this road program out of the stimulus funds really tackles some of the roads that could not, because of the extreme condition, like those in Northeast Trinidad, like Matlot and Grand Riviere, those with damaged bridges and so on, and coming all along the East-West corridor, those in Paramin, which were repaired by my predecessor, the now Prime Minister, and they do require repairs now, And this part here, as I said, we weren't, because we couldn't have site visits, we couldn't have engaged contractors and so on, but we've done the work. We've done the work to be able to execute this in the dry season as early as January next year. And this is in addition to what the Minister of Finance announced. And we believe that we will have a very robust road repair program in this fiscal year.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. And Minister, I was hoping for you to hear you say that, because I know the Minister, in his budget presentation, he highlighted some of the areas in the stimulus package. However, no mention was made of most of the agricultural access roads in the constituency of Couva North and mainly in central Trinidad. And I expected when you give your budget presentation, perhaps in the other place, you might elaborate a little more and highlight some of the other areas that the Honourable Minister of Finance did not make mention of. However, Minister, I'm just making a humble plea on behalf of the farmers of Couva North, especially in that Felicity area where there's a significant amount of agricultural access roads to be refurbished and repaired. I'll kindly appreciate if you can conduct a site visit, and the Honourable Senator next to you can advise you also on these roads, because he's very familiar with the area. The road is in a very dilapidated condition, and we will kindly like your assistance in getting it repaired.
Remember, let me say to you that it is not for lack of familiarity. I once lived in the Couva North constituency, and as a minister, I've been there many, many times. I know the roads, but let me tell you, the criteria for selecting a road is first and foremost, and this is the ministry's work, not the minister's work. The ministry has county officers and county officers. There is one in your constituency in Chase Village. And each county officer would put forward a program, and it is judged based on the impact, the number of farmers to be impacted. So if you have $1 million to spend, and 50 farmers are going to be impacted here, and 10 in another place, we go with 50. And recognizing that simply because of the availability of funding. And while we've done that for several years, and we've done 105.78 for that period, including some in Couva North, we recognize that some equally important roads need our attention, and that is being funded out of the stimulus. And if there's any farmer or any community, you have to engage the county officer and the extension officers and make the representation so it gets into the system and it gets the traction. Remember also that road repairs are not just Ministry of Agriculture, it is the corporations, it is the Ministry of Works, we have different ways in which we get it done. But understand that not every inch of road, not that the farmers are not in need, and not that the farmers or a particular part of the country is less than. It is just that in managing the funding, we do in fact have a criteria. Thank you.
Minister of Planning and Development.
Madam Chairman, I just wanted to add a little to what the Minister of Agriculture has said. In the development program, we have also put money into the PURE fund, which is under the Ministry of Works and Transport, in terms of road repair, and it will also take into consideration agricultural access roads. So just to indicate that it is not that we are being neglectful in any way, but we're trying to make sure that the roads of Trinidad and Tobago, including minor roads, major roads, and the agricultural access roads, are all taken care of. And PURE has a very effective mechanism for executing. So we've done that in terms of some of the agricultural access roads. So have no fear.
Member for Kamutra Manzanilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. to the Honorable Minister, line item 001 and a K. Just wondering if the flood control program.
Where are you at K?
Are we in K?
No.
No? Oh,
No.
I apologize.
Member for Opuch West?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sticking with line item 001. Minister, you, both yourself and your colleague just indicated that there are several heads under which agricultural access roads are taken care of. Is that correct, Minister?
I didn't say agricultural access roads. I said several, I didn't use the word head. I said that roads fall under corporations, Ministry of Works, and the Ministry of Agriculture. So that sometimes in making, and I'll use Trace Bridge in a memberized constituency. Sometimes it is not clear because some of these roads, like Trace.
Just 1 minute, Minister. I think once you've corrected what the members put, let the member put the question he'd like on the line item. We've had very exhaustive conversations. I must say, Minister, and I mean this to the greatest respect, you're one of those guests that really takes advantage of their host. Yes, member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, based on your comment just now, can you provide, Minister, if I may, can you provide a list of the agricultural access roads that will be addressed in the coming fiscal year so that we may know? Because although you are indicated that there are several roads that will come in this, via the stimulus package, we have no way of knowing what those programs and what those activities and which roads are supposed to be.
So, member for Opuch West, I'll ask you to use another opportunity to get that information, because what we were on is item 001. I allowed the minister an opportunity to develop things so that members will get some sort of background. But really and truly, I think we're going way off our exercise this afternoon. It's nice for us to have all these nice educational discussions, but really it's not within our remit. And while I enjoy the presence of both ministers, we have other ministers we'd also love to engage. Yes, member for Opuch West.
Minister, if I may just stick purely then to script. You have a 2021 estimate of 5.5 million with which you propose to do certain access roads, but you've only spent 747 million based on your revised estimate. Can the minister advise which roads were proposed in 2021 and which were not completed based on the fact that you now have a close to a $4 million shortfall in expenditure under this line item 001?
Madam Chair, I'll provide that in writing.
Okay, thank you very much. Member for Caroni East.
Madam Chair, Minister, under the same line item 001, I'd like to invite you to come and see the agricultural access road off of Chinchin Road in Caroni East, which is Lalu Trace. And I'd like you to see the bridge that has fallen into the watercourse. And is there any way your ministry can assist us? Because the farmers that supply the NAMDEFCO program, there are 50 farmers in this area, they have very little recourse in terms of getting their produce in and out as this bridge has fallen into the watercourse. And we need some help in repairing this bridge.
Okay, so I hear you, member for Caroni East, and I think the minister was very exhaustive in dealing with the issue that there are lots of roads, lots of access that need addressing, but there's a certain formula by which they go. So I'm sure you can use some other mechanism to advance the particular interest with the bridge. Member for St. Augustine.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Under item J001, the provision of agricultural access. First of all, I want to say to the Minister that this amount allocated, although you have spoken so well of your intention for agricultural access roads, I know
One
this
minute,
might
are
be
we
one
under
road.
001?
Yes.
I haven't seen any allocation under 2022.
Oh, no? Yes, so, sorry, you have zero allocation, but I also, last year, you had
Yeah,
just,
but we've treated, remember, we've
Yes.
treated with that, all right? And we're really looking at estimates for 2022. We've had over 10 minutes treating with the variance, et cetera. Could you please carry us to another place?
Madam Chair, I just want to bring to the attention of the Minister, the St. Augustine constituency, the Norris Dairy Wholesale Market at Mokoya is one of the Ministry of Agriculture's major facilities.
Would that be under, which
yes,
item?
and the
Give me
road
an
there,
item.
Yes, and the road there is also an agriculture road.
All right, okay,
and I just want to bring it to the attention
I
of
would
the
say
Minister.
to you,
Thank you.
what I've said to Karani is what the Minister has said to Kuvan North, what I've said to Urukuch West. All right, there are other mechanisms that are available to you with respect to treating with your specific roads in your specific constituencies. Okay, can we go on? K, drainage and irrigation, and I believe that's where Kamuta Manzanilla was.
Thank you again,
Yes.
Madam Chair. Honorable Minister, the line item 001. Just a simple question. Does the flood control program, does the river swamp fall under this line item? Or 003?
Madam Chair, under both, the 001 is used in collaboration with the Ministry of Works for water management across the country, and those are based on projects that the Ministry of Works, the Drainage Division, work with us on, and 003 is specific to Plummeter.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, under line item 005, development of water management infrastructure for Caroni Buccal area, I see that the 2021 estimate was $1 million, the revised estimate was 0, and the 2022 estimate is 975,000. Firstly, why wasn't any of the allocation spent? I probably think you may say COVID-19 restrictions, but I'll let you give your answer, as well as what is the scope of works for fiscal 22 that is planned in this area?
Right. Well, that is not strictly speaking a COVID issue, as I said, in relation to 001. 005 is a line item that is executed with the Ministry of Works, Drainage Division, and that line item is meant to deal with the infrastructure, particularly for the rice farmers, but it's infrastructure used by everybody. It means that in the last fiscal there was no work that was required of us. As you know, Ministry of Works had a very aggressive drainage and water management program. They would have taken up work that we may have done in collaboration with them, but the provision is still made for this fiscal in the event that we have to do anything on that particular part of the country.
So what you're saying that this line item is specifically just for the rice farmers and their areas?
No, I didn't say that at all. It's the Caroni Buccal area. I said that is where you have your rice farmers, but the water is used by farmers. Even in the rice land now we have corn and sweet potato and so on taking place. It's meant for that particular geographic area.
And as far as you're concerned, it is sufficient right now?
Well, it is based on, as I said, we work with the Ministry of Works. They're the ones with statutory responsibility for the water courses, and they're the ones we would work with. And if there is need for us to incur an expenditure, for example, this expenditure may be incurred in a pump or in doing some piece of infrastructure work, then we would do that. But in the last fiscal and the one before, the Ministry of Works had their very aggressive drainage program, and last fiscal we did not have to expend anything.
Okay, thank you very much.
Member for Caroni North. Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to refer the Minister attention to 001, Water Management and Flood Control Program. Minister, this was allocated in 2021 3 million, but only 1.3 was utilized. And taking into consideration the quantity of flooding that has taken place, especially within the constituency of Cuba North, which is more or less on the western coast, where most of the watercourse from central Trinidad comes down to Cuba North when it's exiting into the ocean. There's a significant amount of watercourse that was traditionally maintained by the Ministry of Agriculture previously, that is not being currently maintained at this point in time. Can the Minister advise why it is this $3 million was not utilized for the proper maintenance of these watercourses?
Remember, as I said when I dealt with 001, the responsibility, as you may or may not know, for watercourses lie under law with the Ministry of Works. They're the ones who maintain watercourses. If there was a time in Cuba North that drainage, those large drains were maintained, it was because of Carney 1975 Limited maintaining, looking after its own interests and maintaining the infrastructure for which the state at the time may have made allocations. What we're required to do is to, when something has to be done in relation to a farming facility that the Ministry of Agriculture is responsible for, we do that. So it might be pumps like in Plomita, where we're responsible for pumps, in Caroni Bocal, where we assist the farmers with our mobile pump when we're in the dry season. Those things, that this allocation, that line item, is meant to support things that we may be required to do on the advice of the Ministry of Works in areas for which we are responsible. We are not responsible for the exit of water into the sea, the Gulf, which is the western boundary of your constituency, and many other things that you have spoken about.
Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Same line item 001. Can the Minister indicate which, I can speak from Oropouche West. I have substantial numbers of farmers, especially in places like Rahamatrice, who have not benefited from any of this money in this allocation, $1.4 million spent in 2021. Can the Minister advise if his projection for 2022 involves any possible expenditure on flood control program? And this particular head is Water Management and Flood Control Program. I want to know if his allocation for 2022 envisages the expenditure of any money that would help the farmers of Oropouche West treat with and address the problem of flood control.
Minister, I'm not going to allow you to take advantage
Madam
of me.
Chair, I am afraid of you.
Okay? No, I'm not sure we've understood what the Minister has said about 001 and 003, which he has said repeatedly from the inception when the question was first asked by the member of Kamuto Manzanilla. Okay, as I have said before to members, with respect to their concerns for their constituency, it may be tangential to these things, but there are other avenues where available to you, not in this exercise, but other avenues available to you where you can bring focus on a particular issue in your constituency. All right? So I'm not going to allow that question. I hope that helps guide us in going forward. Member for Kamuto Manzanilla.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Honorable Minister, line item 003. I'm just asking the status of the Plomita project and what is expected in the next fiscal year.
Right. So, members, as Minister of Finance indicated in the budget statement, So this 003 is in addition to what we committed to do in the budget out of the stimulus. So as you know, we've committed to replace the pumps. The pumps are one is in the country, and the PS is consulting with the Ministry of Works to determine a few things. One was remote operation, and we've gotten the advice that remote operation is not feasible. And the other one was how the pumps are going to be, whether they're going to be diesel driven or driven by electricity. You know, some of the challenges with supplying it continuously with diesel and the loss of the diesel. We've now sought advice from Ministry of Works on that also. But so that in addition to the stimulus funding, it will deal with the issue of the pumps. We still have the Ministry of Works, as you know, had a very aggressive program in clearing the channels. That has been done, and there might still be some road repair program in Plumita. So that is what 003 and a portion of the stimulus is for.
Thank you. I think the people of Plumita will be very happy.
K, land acquisition. Item 004, social infrastructure. Item 005, multi-sectoral and other services. Honorable members, item 005 spans 3 pages. I therefore will also announce the project groups. L, Agricultural Youth Apprenticeship Program. A, Administrative Services. F, Public Buildings. K, Lands and Surveys. We now go to Infrastructure Development Fund. We are at page 247. Item 003, Economic Infrastructure. Item 004, Social Infrastructure. Honorable members, the question is that the sum of $709,144,000 for head 77, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, stand part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The sum of $709,144,000 for head 77, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, now stand part of the schedule. Thank you to the Minister. Thank you to the Minister in the Ministry. Thank you to the PS and to all the technocrats. Head 42, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. Head 42, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, the sum of $2,332,469,000. Members, just so that we can make use of the time, we will be starting at page 241 on the estimates of recurrent expenditure. Then we go on to the draft estimates for revenue and expenditure of statutory boards and similar bodies and the Tobago House of Assembly, and we start there at page 224, and then the draft estimates of the DP and the draft estimates for the DP will start at page 94. Head 42, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, $2,332,469,000. I will now invite the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government to make a brief opening statement, not exceeding 5 minutes. Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As always, it is my privilege to report to this Standing Finance Committee and to the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the progress made by the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. We at the Ministry, through the 14 municipal corporations and our 2 state agencies, remain dedicated to delivering good governance and service excellence by putting people first. Despite the adverse effects of COVID-19 pandemic and the current economic situation impacting not only our government, but across the world, we continue to do our very best with the resources available. Our aim is to ensure all citizens, regardless of the municipality in which they reside, are provided with much-needed services of the corporations and state agencies under our remit. As the first servant at the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, I am immensely proud of the unreserved efforts made on a daily basis by our local government practitioners, all mayors, all chairmen, all deputy mayors, all vice chairmen, aldermen and councillors, to represent and protect the everyday interests and needs of their burgesses, especially during this global pandemic. I want to especially thank the Permanent Secretary, Deputy Permanent Secretary, the Chief Executive Officers, and all employees across the local government fraternity for their continued dedication and commitment to the people of our beloved country. Madam Chair, we at the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, and by extension the 14 corporations and 2 state agencies, are very pleased with the proposal for allocation in the amount of $1,656 million that will allow us to continue delivering the essential goods and services to the citizens. Thank you.
Honorable members, the question is that the sum of $2,332,469,000 for Head 42, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, stand part of the schedule. Honorable members, the sum of $2,332,469,000 for Head 42, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, is comprised of monies proposed for expenditure under the following subheads and items to be found in the draft estimates of recurrent expenditure, the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure of the statutory boards and similar bodies and of the Tobago House of Assembly, and the draft estimates of the development program. We shall now proceed to consider the draft estimates of recurrent expenditure. Subhead 01, Personal Expenditure, Item 001, General Administration. Member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Minister. Under 08 vacant posts, and that includes salaries and COLA, without incumbents, I see that your ministry intends to spend $3 million for 2022. Could you indicate to this meeting how many vacant posts will be filled with this allocation?
We filled 595 and vacant is 1,334.
Madam Chairman, I just want to make the point that the filling of vacant posts is a matter for the commissions. Be aware of that. It's not a government decision. So even though, what is that? I didn't interrupt you. So
you go ahead.
I would like to. So even though there's a provision, the actual expenditure will depend on the number of vacancies that are filled by the relevant authorities, which is not the government. And if there's need to put more funding will be put. These things are very difficult to estimate because you have no idea the speed and the intensity at which the various commissions will do their work.
I'm asking the Minister, Minister of Finance, has his ministry gone against the Cabinet's decision as it relates to the freeze of vacant hiring in terms of filling vacancies?
That is not a matter for the Minister. It is the Ministry of Finance that determines the expenditure under vacant posts. And we have put allocations, as I said before, that will cater for up to 50% of the vacancies to be filled if they are filled. And that is a matter under the discretion of the Ministry of Finance.
So the Ministry of Finance has ended the moratorium on the hiring of public officers that was announced in the 2021 budget?
Madam Chairman, through you, I answered this question already, you know. You're trying to twist my words. I said we have made an allocation, and I said this before, and I'll say it again, for up to 50% of the vacant posts, which we will monitor and take appropriate action as the circumstances dictate.
Subhead 02, Goods and Services, item 001, General Administration.
No, Madam Chair, and my hand up. I wanted to ask one under 001. So if you would permit me, item 14, remuneration to members of Cabinet appointed committees. Can the Minister provide in writing the list of the Cabinet committees currently functioning, its members, and the remuneration to those persons?
I just want to inform that we do not have any at this moment.
Member for Cuba South.
Madam Chair, Minister, 03 uniforms. Could you inform or advise
Just a minute. Sorry. I went back to 01 because I did not see the member for the introduction. Are we finished with 01? And therefore, I will recall the head again and I'll take you, just so that we all on the same page. Subhead 02, Goods and Services, item 001, General Administration, member for Cuba South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Minister, you have an increase under 03 uniforms to spend of $7.8 million approximately. Could you inform this meeting how this sum will be expended under the sub-item?
Okay, we are preparing for the new intake of the municipal police officers, and this money will be spent there.
And that will be expended on how many officers?
One officer, the amount will be 20,000.
So, Minister, you may telling me one.
We intend to
good.
We intend to do 290.
290 officers, municipal police officers.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Down.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, two questions really, but just to follow up on what Cuba South asked earlier, can you indicate what's the current complement of municipal officers as it stands?
705.
Okay.
Presently.
And you expect to intake how many further?
5. 1990 by December, and 237 by next year, September.
Okay. Minister, I know you may not have the information with you right now, but if you'd give the undertaking to give us a breakdown by regional corporations, I'll be grateful by the end of this year. The other question, Madam, if I can continue. Line item 04, electricity. The Minister of Finance announced in his budget that there will be a harmonization across ministries with an effort to conserve electricity at ministries. But there's an increase of 200,000. Does this reflect arrears from the past?
So we have outstanding bills to be paid.
So it's arrears?
Yes.
Member for St. Augustine.
Item 08, rent and lease of office accommodation and storage. Under this item, there is an increase of $93,350. I want to ask the Minister what accounts for this increase. Have you rented additional properties?
The police. At the ministry, we have a lot of old equipment and photocopy machines, etc. And we intend to use it for this purpose.
No, this is, rent or lease of office accommodation and storage, not the equipment. 08. If not at this moment, can the Minister provide in writing what accounts for the expenditure here? Perhaps give the list of rented properties, the date that they were rented, and the value of the lease or rent, and the landlord, please.
It's 2 buildings, the trade center and the decentralization building.
All right. But you will be able to provide that?
Certainly.
The date of the value, the name of the landlord?
Yeah, yes.
Member for Old Puch West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Line item 05, telephones. I note that for 2021, you had an estimate of 200,000, but your revised estimate for 2021 is 800,000, which is a 300% increase. Can the Minister advise what accounted for that substantial increase in the allocation for telephones?
We have a lot of outstanding bills that has to be paid off.
Just as a follow-up, Minister, you now have an allocation of 500,000. Would that clear, that 800,000, would it clear all existing arrears, which means that your 500,000 proposed for 2022 would be for pure day-to-day yearly expenditure as opposed to arrears? My question, just to abbreviate, is whether or not, having spent the 800,000 in 2021, you have now cleared off the arrears, so you no longer have any arrears going forward.
This will be done from April to the present.
I'm not sure I understand. What would be done from April to present?
The outstanding bills that we have is from April to the present day.
So, Minister, would this figure clear off all outstanding arrears for 2021 and previously? So, as at 2022, we have no arrears?
What I would like to suggest, if it cannot be paid off, we will wait for the mid-year review to apply for more funding.
Minister, do you know at all if you are entering 2022 with current arrears? And if you do, can you advise what the value of the arrears is going forward in 2022 as of today? In the interest of time, Minister, if I can ask that you can provide that response in writing.
Sure.
Thank you.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. 16 contract employment. Minister, you're going to expend an increase of $16.6 million on contract employment. Can you inform this meeting how many officers or contract officers you intend to recruit via this increased allocation?
Contract employment. Funds will be used for renewal of existing contract.
Madam Chairman, while the Minister is getting his notes, I just want to point out that my information tells me this is for the filling of several critical positions within the ministry and the municipal corporations, such as Chief Disaster Management Coordinator, Public Health Officers, Corporate Secretaries, Financial Officers, Regional Planning Personnel, Litter Prevention Wardens, Facilities Managers, Business Operation Assistants, Employee Assistant Officers, and so on. It's to fill out vacant positions within the...
Thank you very much. Through the Minister of Finance now, it seems that I will have to pose this question. Could we be provided, could this meeting in writing, a breakdown of the respective classification, because the Minister of Finance has provided, and in terms of where this different classification in terms of how many will be deployed, whether it is at head office, whether it is at respective departments with the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Corporation.
Sure, I will liaise with the Minister and that information will be provided.
Thank you very much.
Either by myself or through the Ministry of Local Government. Okay?
Member for Princess
Madam Chair, could we clarify for the benefit of this meeting whether we will be posing questions to the Minister of Finance or is it the Minister of Local Government?
Well, I think it's customary that you pose to the line minister.
Yes.
But the Minister of Finance with all ministries has always assisted this committee.
Yes, but
it happened in even the first ministry.
I see is now undertaking
Member
to
for
provide
Princess Town.
Madam, I want to clarify through you to the Honourable Minister line item 0 for electricity. This outstanding...
Excuse me, member.
Sorry?
What number is that? What item?
04. Electricity. The Minister indicated that this has to do with arrears. Can the Minister indicate that this increase will clear the arrears owed to TNTech?
Yes.
It will clear out the outstanding amount?
Yes.
And Madam, line item 17, training. The Minister has an increase of 7.145 million. Can the Honourable Minister give us an idea whether or not this has to do with the digital trust or what this allocation will be utilized for, seeing it's a major increase?
This is a primary training for the municipal police.
For the municipal police?
Yes.
Okay.
Member for St. Augustine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 22, short-term employment. There is an increase of double the amount this year compared to your revised of last year. In terms of you are being allocated twice the amount you utilized in the last year. Can you indicate what type of employment will be done under this vote? And perhaps you could give us the category and the number of persons you intend to recruit?
Okay. At this time, the Ministry of Rural Development is only filling critical positions, and as we move closer to local government reform, the aim is to ensure that vacancies in the permanent establishment are filled and that the necessary non-permanent jobs are brought onto the permanent establishment. Currently, There's only one person on contract employment at the ministry. We intend to fill established positions first, then fixed term contracts and short term if we cannot find persons within the specialized skills required.
Member for Maruga Tableland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the Minister. Item 43, security services. I noticed that nothing was allocated for 2022. Can the Minister explain?
Okay. I'd like to inform you that no funding requested is true because we have the municipal police from the Port of Spain City Corporation.
So guided, Minister.
Member for Cubasau.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Minister, with respect to this $7.1 million allocation for training, could you inform this meeting, is your ministry engaging service providers and so on in relation to this sum or consultancy services, as you indicated, in relation to training for the municipal officers?
Yeah, as I said before, this will be used for municipal police training for batch 1 of 2021, which comprises of 92 trainees. Additionally, it will be used for training of staff at head office. And we have as an average of, as I said before, 20,000 per officer is spent on the training. Any other additional information I could provide it for you in writing?
Yeah, could you provide, if you're outsourcing these services, could you provide the meeting with the consultancy or external service providers and provide a breakdown of the costs that will be incurred for the provision of these external providers?
Certainly.
And with respect to 58 medical expenses, I see that your ministry spent $3,000 in 2020, $3,000 in 2021, and now you have sought from the Minister of Finance an increased allocation of $1.5 million. Could you provide a breakdown in relation to medical expenses?
Yeah. This is for to pay medical expenses for senior members of staff and for medicals for the newly appointed municipal police. The first batch of 2021 was 92 recruits, and the second batch of 2021 is expected to be 150 recruits.
Member for Princestown.
Honourable Minister, if we turn our attention to 23 fees, there's an increased allocation of 25,000, bringing the estimates being 50,000 for this financial year. Minister, as you are aware, I have been raising the issue for the past 3 or 4 years of the sick building that the Princestown Regional Corporation is subjected to in terms of having to operate out of. Every year, as part of the Standing Finance Committee, it's something that we discuss. As under this line item 23 fees, would this have anything to do with consultants or organizations with respect to inspection of these buildings and so on in terms of OSHA? Because, Minister, you've been speaking a lot about these municipal police, and I'm looking at 23 and I'm looking at line item 17, and you justified 17 training by saying it's for municipal police. But we are hiring all these municipal police, but we have nowhere to put them. And that's at least my challenge in Princestown, and that's something, as I've said, I've been raising for the past 3 or 4 years. So I'm hoping under one of 17 or 23 we can shed some light on that.
Okay, with reference to 23 fees, This is used for legal fees, if any, and software license and technical support. And also will be used in the area of the GIS software, which will be used for the regional planning unit and disaster management. And 23 also is for head office.
Member for Orupuchuas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to return to line item 58, medical expenses. Minister, you indicated that there was this substantial increase from 3,000 revised estimate 2021 to 1.5 million proposed for 2022 because of the employment of additional municipal police. But you already have municipal police catered for, you have municipal police in existence now. Is it that they were not considered and now we are providing medical support to all of them because they were not catered for before? Is this figure now for all but none was provided before?
But I just want to explain, we are on a continued drive to hire more municipal police, and that's where it comes in. Our target is 100 municipal police in each corporation, except Port of Spain, which will be 200 municipal police. And the drive and the process is ongoing.
Agreed, Minister, but you already have in-house at this point municipal police who should have been catered for medical expenses. Is that not so?
All right, but this is for the new intake of police.
So where would I be able to find the medical expenses for the current existence of the current municipal police that currently exist?
And the corporations.
Thank you.
Member for Kamucha Mansanilla. Member for Princess Town.
Thank you, Madam. Honourable Minister, line item 62, promotions, publicity and printing. There's a large increase of 434,000 at a time when several other parts of the ministry has been severely cut. Can the Honourable Minister indicate what sort of program do you envisage that will warrant a $434,000 increase in the area of promotions, publicity and printing?
Well, the explanation I have is that this is being used for advertising vacancies in the ministry, and also will be used for the local government reform implementation.
And do you have a timeline for this, in light of the answer you provided on the 62, a timeline for this local government reform?
Within the next fiscal year.
I mean, so you are aware that this is a promise of the PNM for the past 2 decades.
Well, as you know, member, that we just came out of the Joint Select Committee and it was laid in the Parliament, and
So you live in hope?
I have the hope.
Okay. We didn't promise local government reform.
Still.
Question has been asked and answered. Thank you.
Subhead 03, minor equipment purchases, item 001, general administration, member for St. Augustine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Minister, 02, office equipment. In 2021, you spent $10,000 on office equipment. And this year, you have requested $50,000. Can you indicate what plans you have for this additional money?
Remember, this is to purchase copiers, fax machines, scanners, etc. Office equipment.
In 2021, you had an allocation of $50,000 again. However, you only utilized $10,000 out of it. Was there a challenge with procuring the equipment, or what was the challenge to utilize the money?
Because of the COVID period, a lot of the suppliers were closed at certain periods and so on. And we couldn't get the parts imported to the country.
Okay.
Subhead 04, current transfers and subsidies. Item 001, regional bodies. Member for St. Augustine.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I just wanted to be noted, there is a tremendous decrease of 54.6 million to regional bodies. That includes the transfers and subsidies to regional corporation. And I want to express concern, but ask the minister if he as minister would have requested less funds from the Ministry of Finance under this item.
Remember, the exercise is a line-by-line item rather than this global category. So,
yes. Well, we will go into each regional corporation, so perhaps the minister could better explain.
These are not regional corporations, these are regional bodies. These are not regional corporations. These are regional bodies. That's where I am.
Excluded.
Current transfers and subsidies, regional bodies. Okay, so can we go on item 002, Commonwealth bodies. Item 007, households. Member for Cuba North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, to the Honourable Minister, line item 40, gratuities to contract officers. Mr. Minister, this is an item that more or less the ministry will have some idea in advance in terms of when these persons' contracts are going to come to an end and when the gratuity is to be paid. I'm seeing a difference in the estimate and the revised estimate of approximately $2.3 million. Can you kindly explain this difference?
Payment of gratuity for contract officers. Payments have been made given the additional funding received in the mid-year review for the last fiscal year. Currently, there are only 3 persons awaiting payment at this time. Total contract workers is 155. 3 persons whose documents have been processed are awaiting payment in the amount of $167,664.31. If insufficient, we will revisit at the midterm.
Madam Chairman, could I just come in here? If the member looks closely, one will see that the original 2021 estimate was $3,046,640. The 2022 estimate is very close to that, at $3,042,500. As the minister has pointed out, supplementary funding was given to that ministry to deal with gratuities that were due and payable in fiscal 2021. There is no anticipation that that magnitude or that level of payment of gratuities would occur in 2022. And therefore, it is an error to assume that the decrease will result in any disadvantage to anyone. In fact, based on what the minister has just said, there may be a surplus of funds in this sub-item.
Thank you, Minister of Finance, for that additional explanation. Minister, however, what I ask is that this is something that can be calculated prior to the end of the contract. And what we're seeing here is additional spending from what was estimated in 2021 of $3.046 million, increasing to $5.3 million. So is it a case that it was under budgeted last year, taking into consideration that the ministry will have in advance the persons who gratuity will be required to pay to? And in 2022, even though it is similar to what the estimate was for 2021, is there going to be any additional funding that this line item will require in the mid-year review?
Yes, I'd just like to come in to explain the concept of gratuity in the hope that this kind of line of questioning will cease. A gratuity is due at the end of a contract period. Contracts are sequenced, they overlap, they don't all end at the same time. And therefore, the payment of a gratuity will be different in every single year. Therefore, you cannot look at the 2021 expenditure and draw the conclusions that you are drawing.
That is
the fact is that the ministry has been adequately provisioned in 2022 for gratuities, and it was adequately provisioned after the supplementary appropriation last year in 2021.
That is understood, Minister of Finance.
Not by you.
What you are saying there is understood, but that does not address the question being asked.
Chairman, I think I've made the point that the provision was adequate in both 21 and 22. I don't think there's any point in belaboring a dead horse.
Member for St. Augustine.
My question will be on 009.
Member for Barataria-San
So then, Minister, based on your explanation that you gave to Couva North, with respect to that the ministry will know exactly whose contract is going to end and exactly how much gratuity that they are owed, can you then tell us how many persons you anticipate this allocation of $3 million to pay for fiscal 2022 for gratuities?
If I could provide this in writing for you.
Okay, thank you. Can you also provide how many persons were paid for fiscal 2021 also? Thank you.
Item 009, other transfers. Member for St. Augustine.
Thank you. Madam, on the last occasion we were here, I asked the Minister to provide in writing the list of contractors or CPAP workers. Yes, 04.
Yeah, yes, please.
CPAP, yes. On the last occasion, I had asked the Minister to present in writing the list of contractors and the number of teams by constituency. I also made that request in the mid-year review, and I have not received it. I just want to put that on record. And I want to express concern here where there is a $67.4 million decrease in the allocation to the CPAP. And I want to ask, Minister, does the government have intention of cutting the CPAP program in any way? Will workers be affected? Are you going to terminate workers? What accounts for this $67.4 million decrease?
I assure you, Honourable Member, that we did provide the information that you requested last financial year. And concerning the shortfall, there will be no cutting of workers. When the mid-year review comes up, we will be requesting additional funding. Because we all know CPAP is doing a fantastic job in this country in every single constituency. Or every region, I should say. In every region.
Well, Minister, I want to tell you in some more than others, and I still would like, if you could provide me with a list of contractors or teams, however you want to call it, in writing by constituency. St. Augustine constituency is tremendously underserviced, and I know that when I write you for specific complaints, you do respond. However, in general, the area is tremendously under-maintained and under-serviced, and I sit amongst neighboring constituencies represented by people from other political parties who have nice lawns and nicely cut parks. So I'm a bit concerned that there may be some political discrimination.
Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair, I didn't get if the Minister did agree to provide the information in writing.
I'll provide the information in writing, but by the environmental work areas.
Thank you.
For Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the last occasion, 1 year ago, when we asked about the listing, I noticed that Oropouche West had 12 CPAP gangs. I now see, based on your figures here, that there was a $42.8 million increase in fiscal 2021. Can the minister advise if any of that increase was spent on increasing the number of gangs or the number of contractors in the constituency of Oropouche West? And if he can't, if not specifically in Oropouche West, if he can provide a listing for fiscal 2021 of where this $442,800,000 was spent, how many CPAP contractors existed, and how many gangs. This is for fiscal 2021. I expect that fiscal 2022, which is the commitment he just gave to my colleague, will be provided as well to show that there is no loss of employment in CPAP as proposed.
I just want to make a general point. Members opposite throughout this Standing Finance Committee have demanded information by constituency. We do not operate in that way. We operate by counties and regions. And therefore, I would ask members opposite to stop asking for this kind of information by constituency, because we do not collect data in that way.
Perhaps the minister is unaware, but 1 year ago, even confirmed by the minister just now, documentation was provided to the Standing Finance Committee by constituency. I referred to that in my introduction to my question. Therefore, if the Minister of Local Government, of Rural Development and Local Government, I am asking if you will be able to provide for the Standing Finance Committee a list of the contractors and listing of the quantity of gangs by constituency for fiscal 2021 and proposed for fiscal 2022. I think the Minister of Finance is completely unaware of how this thing is being done.
Member for Barataria Sanwan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, if I may, I am not aware if the Minister of Local Government has responded and confirmed he will provide the information in writing.
The information will be provided to you, Honourable Member, but by the environmental work areas.
Member for Barataria Sanwan.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, I just want to find out if the Minister can also provide us for the salaries of the CPAP executive members. The reason I'm asking this is because in the last fiscal year, I remember CPAP, the workers were not being paid, but yet the executive management of CPAP was being paid. So I want to know whether or not, what is their remuneration package at the CPAP, the executive management, that is.
At no point will you. I'm just being advised, member, that all the workers was always being paid.
But what about providing the salaries for the executive management?
Yes, we'll provide it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, to the Honourable Minister, on this the same line, item 04. On the 8th of June 2021, it was reported in the newspaper that the Prime Minister last Saturday said CPAP workers would be paid 2/3 of their wages for the time they were at home during the COVID-19 pandemic. Honourable Minister, I am saying for this line item, in 2021 it was budgeted at 400 million, but yet in the revised estimate it is 442 million. An additional $42 million was spent in this program while workers were at home and were being paid 2/3 of their salary. Can you kindly explain the reason for this additional 42 million and where did this money go?
The original budget. The original amount for this was 400 million, and because the workers were home, we were being able to save Divisional request was greater than 400 million. I'm just getting about 50 million.
Thank you.
We were able to save about 50 million because of the pandemic and when the workers were home. We could provide those figures. And I could provide those figures in writing for you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. If that being the case, of 50 million was saved, then why it is that in the revised estimate we have an additional 42 million from what was budgeted? It means 92 million here is unaccounted for now. Can you kindly explain why what this 92 million in additional spending entails? Where did this money go?
That this fiscal year, the workers started back out to work, so they will get in the full salary, and that will be the full amount they'll be getting, the full salary.
I'm not talking about this fiscal year, Mr. Minister. I'm speaking about fiscal term 2021.
Yeah, 2021 we requested 542 million.
We got 404 million.
And we got 404 million.
Which is why we are now saying that there was savings based on the workers being at home.
That's the reason we say we got some savings because the workers were home.
Minister, we have no idea in this committee how much the request is. We have no idea when the corporation requests funding how much they ask the ministry. What we have is what is written in front of us. What is written in front of us is the allocation in 2021 of 400 million, which is what the organization was expected to utilize to fulfill its responsibility and its mandate. What we are seeing here is an overspending of 42 million. It does not reflect any savings. And what I'm humbly asking you is, can you advise on that?
Right? CPAP requested, the request we made, we got 542 million. We received 400 million, and we went back in a mid-year review, and we got 53 million.
So then, Minister, is it that when we are looking at the 2022 estimate, we also have to ask you the question for all the line items, how much you requested? Because what we are seeing here is an allocation for 2022 of 375 million. And this is what the plans are for the upcoming financial year. We have no idea if it is you requested 2 times that amount. Can you advise us how much you requested for this financial year?
47 requested.
547. And you only receive 375. So, Honourable Minister, can you advise us how it is you plan to run this organization with this funding? Is significant underfunding, under budgeting we are seeing here?
No, we will utilize what we have, and we will go back at the mid-year review to request more funding.
So then there is under budgeting happening here in front of us.
What we request, that is what we got, and we have to work with it until we we get the next set the mid-year review.
With all due respect, Honourable Minister, you didn't work with what you got in last financial term. You
Member
went
for
beyond your
Princess,
budgeted allocation.
Member for Cooper North, I would
Thank you, Madam Chair.
ask you to allow Member for Princess Tong to join the conversation. Member for Princess Tong.
Thank you, Madam. Honourable Minister, under line item 04, I know the member for Barataria San Juan has asked for a breakdown of the salaries for the executive of the remuneration package. And your response to that, we look forward to it. But something you said earlier was that employees received 2/3 of their salaries during the COVID pandemic. Was a similar approach adopted for the executive where they only receive 2/3 of their salary remuneration? No. And Minister, on the same line item, can you indicate with respect to the cut of the 67,400,000 over the next few months until the mid-year review comes around and you will be able to access additional funding for CPAP, what areas of CPAP will be affected by this cut until you get that money?
I'm advised none.
None?
None.
So
1 transfers to state enterprises. Honourable members, at this, all right, this is under transfers to state enterprises.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so member for Barataria San Juan, and then we take member for Oropouche West.
003, the Rural Development Company of Trinidad and Tobago, line item 03. Minister, can you indicate why there are no allocations for this particular company for fiscal 2022 and no money spent in 2021?
Well, member, I'm not going to allow this. There was no allocation in fiscal 2021. Not to say that there was an allocation and there was no spend. There was no allocation in 2021. No. So that issue would have been dealt with in 2021.
Ma'am,
okay?
What I'm saying is that there were some items we saw in the budget where there were
well,
no
we're not
allocations.
talking about some items. We're talking about 03.
Yes, ma'am. And the thing is that there were items I saw before where there were no allocations in 2021 and the revised monies were spent.
And there are no, and this is precisely the point I'm making, member for Barataria San Juan.
So then,
right?
can I ask?
There are no allocation estimates 2021 revised, unless I'm looking at something different.
No, you're looking at
if I'm
what
looking
I'm looking
at
at.
the writing, I've already determined.
So,
member for Oropouche West.
Ma'am, can I?
Yes, member for Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Line item 09, the National Reforestation and Watershed Rehabilitation Program.
I'm having member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Line item 09, the RDC National Reforestation and Watershed Rehabilitation Program. Madam, I saw, Mr. Minister, sorry, I saw a $20.7 million allocation, actual spend in 2020, but a revised estimate for 2022 of, in effect, $79 million. Can the Minister advise whether this meant that we have more contractors listed under this program for 2021, because we seem to be going into 2022 with a similar figure? Can the Minister provide a listing of the contractors under this program for 2021 and propose for 2022? But definitely, we have a $60 million increase between 2020 and revised estimate 2021. I would like to know what accounts for that increase, and if it is additional contractors or an expansion in the number or employment of contractors, if the Minister can provide such a breakdown by constituency.
The location.
Minister of Finance, either you give a formal answer or you allow the Minister.
Thank you, Madam. I'd like to intervene again. That information will not be provided by constituency. The data is not collected like that, and the work is not arranged like that.
Can the Minister provide it by region, by geographic region?
It will be provided.
Member for St. Augustine.
Madam Chair, the Rural Development Company is a special purpose company that played a tremendous role, or supposed to play a tremendous role in delivery. Regional corporations previously could utilize their funding to RD and give it to RDC to execute projects. Seeing that RDC is no longer getting a direct subvention, is this still an option for larger projects that require expertise, engineering expertise, and so on, that the regional corporations may not be able to deliver?
Member, again, what we're looking at are estimates where provision is being made. There's no provision. This is a general question you're asking. It is not allowed under this exercise. Member for Couva, no.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, line item 03, Rural Development Company of Trinidad and Tobago. The actual spend was 389,000 in 2020. Can the Honourable Minister advise what that spend was about and why it is no funding is being provided in 2022?
Both questions are not allowed under this exercise. We are not examining 2020. And as I said, if there is no allocation, there is no subject of inquiry. Apparently, members don't seem to appreciate that it's not that they're not entitled to certain information, but not in this exercise.
Thank you, Madam
So
Chair.
the simplest example I can give, if you go to a cabinet and there are drawers, dependent on the drawer you open, you will get what you're looking for. If you open the wrong drawer, you're not going to get it. So let's try and understand that in the exercise that we're about.
Madam Chair, this is the only time that we have the actual figure in front of us.
But
this is the only time we are
remember,
allowed to ask
there
on the
are
actual.
many ways under the standing orders that are open to you right through the session. Many ways. Member for Barataria Sanwa.
Thank you. On line item 8, RDC Principal on Demand Loan Facility. Minister, can you indicate what this loan is for?
This is being used for infrastructural projects throughout the country.
Would you care to give us a list of those infrastructural projects that this $14 million is allocated for?
Madam Chairman, let me come in here. As you have correctly pointed out, there was no allocation in 2020 or 2021 original or revised for this. This is going forward. It is impossible to give a list of projects going forward in the manner in which the member wants.
It's obvious, Minister, that you must have a projection of where you would have projects in order to get $14 million.
That is
because
not
you're not going to pull it out from the sky or from the air. You're going to have a project list.
1 minute. Isn't this item Principal on Demand Loan Facility? So it's a payment. Just 1 minute. This item is a payment on a loan. So member, you may ask what is the principal or the loan or the interest, but not what you're asking. The item may come in another place in the estimates that you can interrogate.
Based on the line item.
I have so ruled.
Ma'am, well then I want to ask this question.
Member for St. Augustine. Member for St. Augustine. I'll come back.
Madam Chair, 08. Can I ask what was the total loan and what it was used for or will be used for? Thank you.
It is used for infrastructure.
So item 8 is the principal on the demand loan. So it's called principal. Look at the difference between 8 and 7. 7 is interest. So if it is the principal, you can't be asking really what is the amount of the loan. That's what principal means. Okay?
But there are two parts to this question, so if the minister could provide the other information, I will appreciate it.
If you could kindly ask the question, then we'll know. You haven't asked the question.
Sorry, I think he heard. The question is, what will this be used for?
I already said, having regard to the item, and that's what I answered Member for Barataria San Juan. It is the same question that is not allowed under this item. Member for Barataria San Juan.
Minister, can you then explain why there was no allocation for this loan in 2021, but an allocation in 2022? Is this a new loan? Is this a new loan?
There was no loan before. That should be obvious.
Exactly. So then I'm asking, what is the purpose of this $14 million loan?
You're not
it's a new
listening
loan.
to the speaker, obviously.
It's a new loan, Minister.
It seems that you cannot understand
Minister, you
simple
cannot take
English.
a loan for no
Honourable
reason.
members,
You must have
we shall now be moving on to subhead 06, current transfers to statutory boards and similar bodies. We are at item 005, local government bodies. Honourable members, we will now move on to the draft estimates of the revenue and expenditure statutory boards and similar bodies and the Tobago House of Assembly. Members, this meeting is now suspended for 20 minutes. We shall resume at 5:30.